Damn, y'all were quick. Hello, Lord Commander. Hello, Dr. Block. It's good to see a return of the Banana Bandits, eh? Duke of Saxe-Coburg, Gotha. Hello, birthday boy. Thanks. Appreciate it. Hello there. Hell yeah, dude. This is gonna be fun. This is going to be very, very fun. As much fun as as a 26-year-old can have, because I am now 26 years old. Help and birthday. Thanks, Seth. Appreciate that. Yep, there he goes. I appreciate it, guys. Yeah, this is going to be a ton of fun. This is going to be a ton of fun. I'm very, very excited. I'm very happy to be back, honestly. It's been a while since our last live stream. Last time we were doing banners, custom banners for channel members, which was fun. I did enjoy that. This time around, though, obviously we had a vote, a poll in the Discord, where we chose what kind of content we wanted to see for today's live stream. And you guys actually decided on world building content and everything like that, which is absolutely something that we're gonna do. However, there's a kind of a way that I want to release information in bits at a time in order to like really maximize the hype that we're building for it. So we'll start off with some of the basic stuff and some of the like official like hardcore decisions that that are implemented into the official world building of our new project. But as well, we will be playing some Realm of Thrones. I did want to mess around and try like this Dragonstone build for like a staunch loyalist of Stannis Baratheon, which I think is going to be pretty interesting. You're going to be colonizing West Africa. That's pretty funny, actually. I don't want to do that. Thanks. I greatly appreciate it, though. But anyway, I have been missing you guys. My sources seem to be a little off. I don't know why. They're not. Never mind. I'm a liar. Sorry. But yeah, so we do have some pretty interesting content that I would love to showcase for you guys. So that being said, we're gonna switch it off over here. Let's actually pull up something else. Yeah, once again, my chat thing is not popping up properly. I don't know what I did. I forgot that's why we took it off in the first place last time. So we'll get rid of the chat widget. It's totally fine, lads. Totally fine. Anyway, we do have some content to show off for you guys. So obviously, you guys probably remember the official world that we're building here. If you don't remember, or if you are new, this is essentially the world of Titanscar. Tytanscar. It's all one word. This is the world of Titanscar, where our new world building project will take place. Essentially, the concept is that these continents were like once these giant beastly titans that ruled as gods and were architects that essentially built the world. And then when they created humanity, they created us to be subservient, to be slaves to their will. You know what I'm saying? And so they ruled over humanity very cruelly and everything like that, demanding ritual sacrifices in order to, give them strength, essentially. There's a lot of like soft world building there. It's not like a direct science of like, yes, more lives equals more power to the Titans. It's like, it's not like a one-to-one like exact scientific measurement there. It is just a lot of like soft world building, especially because this is more so like the creation myth of like, our book of Genesis or whatever. The gods created the heavens and the earth and let there be lights and all that going on. So essentially, These titans, they ruled over humanity very cruelly, very evilly, basically. And then this one titan rose up. None of these titans have names, by the way. This is like a really weird pantheon where it's like if you speak their name, you almost invoke their wrath. So everybody has just kind of unanimously decided never to talk about the names of these titans ever again. So they're literally just known as the titans. The only one who has any kind of distinction against them, essentially, is this guy right here. So this guy was known as the Titan God of Man. He essentially created mankind in his image and then witnessed the great and terrible things that were being dealt upon them, and he felt empathy for them. He felt sadness, and he despaired for their suffering, essentially. And so what he did, this guy, the Titan God of Man, he essentially rose up and kicked off what is known as the Titan War. And it was him and all of humanity like freed from their shackles, and they launched this massive war to fight off all the titans and shit like that. So millions of humans died, and thousands of titans were slain. And where these titans were slain, essentially, it kind of just ripped open the fabric of reality, that like, you know, that veil or that curtain that separates the physical world from the spiritual world. And those things, those big old tears, are essentially like portals. Think of it like portals into purgatory, you know? And so, like, because we essentially killed, as mortals, we killed divine beings, and it kind of just, like, reality didn't know how to hold itself the fuck together, essentially, and ripped open these massive portals into purgatory. Now, this shit is called the Scar. Not so much the portals themselves, but this purgatorial realm is called the Scar. And so, you know, that kind of feeds into a lot of our modern day, quote unquote, modern day legends and tall tales and fables and whatever else have you. The Scar is a very real place, but it also kind of has like this hellish vibe or purgatorial vibe, based off of like Christianity type belief system, you know? Like, I couldn't tell you right now if purgatory in a Christian sense was real or not. I could just say that I believe it's real. In this universe, in Titan Scar, the Scar, our purgatorial state, is in fact very real. To be brought there as a mortal is like eternal damnation, essentially. Like, it's the realm of the spirits of the slain titans. It's where all the current living titans, like, descended into. They ran away from this Titan War, and they all dwell there now. So if you were to, as a mortal, go into the Scar, you're basically giving yourself a death sentence. Like, eternal damnation awaits you there. That being said, during this Titan War, our Titan God of mankind was in fact slain. He died. And now here he lies, his bones kind of become like its own continent. All the other titans that were slain have also become like part of the land. They fell into the sea, and they grew like land over themselves and whatever. And then from like the blood that was spilled from these titan beings, these divine beings, it seeped into the soil, and it seeped into the rivers, and it seeped into the oceans, and it created the animal kingdoms. It created the animalia that we know in our current, you know, state of the plot, essentially. So for this world building project, I thought it would be interesting to step away from like traditional animals. So, you know, knights aren't going to go riding in on horses. They're called striders. They're essentially like, they're still kind of like four-legged, hoofed, like equine type creatures, but they're covered in like bright and colorful feathers. You know what I'm saying? And instead of having like a long snout, they have a round hardened beak at the end of it, strong enough to like crush a melon with a single bite type shit. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of my personal take on like adding more fantasy elements to a world where there's no like elves or dwarves or druids or giants and, you know, trolls or orcs, shit like that. You know, it is predominantly, you know, humanized type of world, kind of like Game of Thrones. I will say there is another race of beings that was introduced Any thoughts on a House Rain or Blackfire playthrough? Love the good work, man. Good luck on your book. I appreciate that. Thank you, my friend. That's awesome. Um, yeah, fuck yeah, dude. So I have actually done not so much a House Rain playthrough, but a Legacy of the Bastard Lion, where we play as a bastard child of a Lannister and a Rain, and then we kind of created our own bastard house, and we took over essentially everything. My children grew up and became the Lords of the North, the Lords of the Westerlands, the Lords of the Riverlands, I'm pretty sure, and then King of the Seven Kingdoms, essentially. It was actually pretty cool. As for like specifically a House Rain playthrough, I'm not sure. I'm not against it because I fucking love House Rain. And the Blackfires, we've done a bastard of House Blackfire as well called the Blackthorn. So we were a bastard child born of a Blackfire and a Tyrell, and we created our Blackthorn kingdom, which was pretty cool. That one was also a fun one. The surgeon wishes you many more years, my lord. Thank you, I appreciate that. It's just Game of Thrones, like, little fantasy at first glance. Yeah, essentially, there's just a lot more mysticism here, you know what I'm saying? So I will say, I did draw, obviously, a lot of inspiration from Game of Thrones, from Lord of the Rings. In Game of Thrones, you have the Maesters. We have the Oath Keepers. More specifically, they're a separate race of beings known as the what did I call them? The Tyrantur? The Tiratun. So Tyratun, the Tiratun, essentially. So they were created during this age of slavery over humanity, to be like the middlemen. So when the Titans created humanity, we bred like rats, and our population boomed into the billions, and in order to keep us in our place, they created the Titans. They created the Tiratun, which are these kind of like half Titan, half human hybrid type things. So they look almost humanoid, but they have like 4 arms. They're like 6 feet tall. They have bone white skin and just big blood red orbs for eyes. Otherwise, they have like mostly like humanoid like facial features as well. They don't have hair. They don't have facial hair. Nothing like that. Their skin is like a weird kind of like hard shell-like type of thing going on. Kevin R, welcome to the ranks of the Night Squires. That's pretty cool. Hell yeah, dude. Sounds like my dad. Sorry, dude. But yeah, so they kind of acted as like overseers, while the Titans were the overlords and like kind of the god kings of everything. The Tiratun were the overseers, and they were like the slave drivers. They forced the humans to like worship and to sacrifice and to build temples of prayer or whatever for the Titans. And then there was humanity. So when the Titan War kicked off and the Titan god of man, found his like sympathy basically for humanity, he did so by looking through the eyes, these cursed like blood orbed eyes of the Tiratun. He saw firsthand what was being done to them, to humanity, and he almost wept for them, and he was like, well, fuck, like this can't happen. We're not going to do this. And so he radicalized the Tiratun, who were also his creation. You know what I'm saying? He alone was the one who created humanity and created the Tiratun. He's the only one who have created life. Whereas the rest of the Titans, they, rose mountains out of the seas, and they calmed the elements, and they tamed the elements and stuff like that, and they carved canyons and mountains and oceans and whatever else. It was this guy alone who created humanity in his image. And then the Tiratun as well. So when he sees what's happening to his creation, he kicks off this Titan War. He slays all of his brothers and sisters. Those who fled into the Scar and now dwell there in this kind of cursed purgatorial realm. And then he himself died and has become part of the land. And now we have essentially our full world setting. So this is the full world of Titans-Scar. Now after the Titan War, the Tiratun, those who fought with humanity for their freedom, remained on the planet. They remained on the, we're going to call it the sphere, but essentially the world is known as Titan Scar. That is the name that the human populations kind of gave the world. Kind of how like Middle Earth is Middle Earth, and then in Game of Thrones it's the known world. This is Titan Scar. So we have the Tiratun who decided to stay with humanity. They did so as the under the intentions of like becoming, I guess you could say, like advisors, you know, like they're there to offer guidance. And so because they have like these cursed eyes, these blood red orbs for eyes, they now wear like these ceremonial blindfolds so that they're no longer like, I guess, deceived by the physical realm. They can see deeply into the scar now. So they exist in the physical world, but they can see into the metaphysical world, you know, or into the spirit realm. And that's how they determine the will of the Titans, or the will of the Titan god, essentially, and helps guide humanity. So that's essentially our equivalent of like the Maesters. There's just a lot more mysticism, you know? And unlike in real life and in Game of Thrones, there's not too many different creation myths that can dispute these points. You know what I'm saying? So the Tiratun, these half-Titan beings, these half-Titan, half-humanoid beings, are semi-immortal. So they can live for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And so it's hard to argue against a being who was there firsthand. Like, oh, that's not what my religion teaches me about how the world was created. You know what I'm saying? So it kind of adds this bit of uniformity to how the creation myth and everything goes on and whatever. Now that kind of becomes a little muddled in the world building, only because a lot of this land has not been fully fleshed out or discovered by me as the creator, the world builder, the architect himself. I have not done too much of that. I will say, like, I want to, like, this bit here is the most of what I've done as far as world building. So this is our main setting right here. This is kind of like our medieval England slash German, I don't know, hybrid culture of place. This is Westeros right here. This little river area here, this little river valley, it's actually quite big because the this entire area is like 500 by 500 miles, which is like 250,000 square miles. That's fucking massive. My original goal was to make it 1,000 by 1,000, but that makes this whole landmass right here within like this mountain range like 1,000,000 square miles, which is fucking massive. Like, it's just shy of how big Westeros was, and I didn't want that. I didn't want it to take a month to get from one point of the country to the other. By making it 500 by 500 square miles, it exists in a physical space that kind of makes sense, and it gave me a pretty realistic scale that I could go based off of in order to make everything exist in proportion to each other in a way that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? That being said, this is being, 250,000 square miles is roughly around the size of like the British Isles plus like Spain or France or something added in there. So it's pretty decently sized. There is like real life, examples of like how a country or a kingdom or a nation would exist like that and shit. So that's pretty interesting. And then all of this over here, imagine like the British Isles if they were Spanish, like predominantly Spanish. Now you do have like this weird, I want to say like ancient Bronze Age era, like Iberian culture up here. So they're kind of like Bronze Age Vikings if they were Spanish rather than Norse. You know what I'm saying? So it's going to be pretty interesting. I am trying to flesh this out a lot more. This area over here is where a lot of our main bad guys are going to come from. Now, I'm not going to spoil too much because that is like one of the big twist secrets of what we're doing. But all you really need to know is that this area right here is where our main plot and our main setting takes place, which means there's all this world that is left undiscovered. You know what I'm saying? And I did that for a purpose, not because, oh, this world is just empty, like nobody lives out here. It's just more so like, I don't want to dictate what happens here. I want to give you guys enough to keep you coming back and wanting more. If I discover everything that there is to discover, and then I just put it out there on paper for you guys. Not only is it just way too much fucking information, but it also like it takes away from the self-discovery. You know what I'm saying? Like, I doubt that George R.R. Martin himself wrote out every fucking noble house in existence and their entire histories when he created, you know, his first draft of Game of Thrones. He created what he needed to for the story, and then the interest in the world kind of evolved on its own. You know what I'm saying? There's even an interview where he kind of wrote himself into a corner when the first draft of Game of Thrones came out, because at the back of the book was a timeline of the Targaryen kings, and then when he goes to write Fire and Blood or House of the Dragon or something, the time doesn't make sense because of what he wrote in the first place. And so he had to go back and he had to like edit a lot of that stuff out. And so by not forcing myself to have everything figured out, it allows me to write what I do know and let everything else kind of just evolve on its own, you know, breathing life into it, you know. Anyway, it would also take you like 25 years to do. No, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. But anyway, that's about it. I do know like a little bit of what's going on in this central area right here. So this is actually all desert area down here. I kind of wanted to do a bit of a like a state of Jerusalem. So this was going to be one of the Titan scars, one of the portals to the spirit realm, basically. Oh shit. And it's kind of being controlled by a sect, a very small sect of like religious zealots that who revere and worship the Titans, and they're like, oh, we're preparing this area, or not so much. Sorry, it's the opposite. So the desert area is where they revere and worship the Titans, but this mountain range surrounding the scar itself is they're defending it. They're almost keeping people out, because they're like, we're here, we're holding it, we're defending it, so that if the Titans ever come back, we're prepared. You know what I'm saying? Kind of like a different version of the Night's Watch. These guys aren't too important, but it was just something I wanted to add in because I thought it would be interesting to the lore and to the world building. Up here obviously would be like Viking-esque cultures. I think over here is some kind of Sardom, kind of like Russia, essentially, or like Serbian or Serbia, something like that. Some kind of like Connaught down here. This right here, I actually expanded the territories of our main setting to include this valley area. It didn't originally include this valley area, but now it's like from these two mountains and anything west of this river essentially is part of our main setting. But this right here is controlled by the Thracian League, kind of like a Grecian peninsula of merchants and traders, essentially, like seafarers. They also control like these two islands down here, and they just go through and they trade for what they do. Like, that's it, honestly. And nobody fucks with them because like they're really like non-combative. They kind of just do whatever the fuck they want, and nobody fucks with them. They do have a really strong military, but they're also kind of elusive. Nobody's really seen their military strength. Nobody's kind of declared war on the merchant states because they're like, well, how the fuck am I gonna get silk all the way up here where it's nothing but like rocky hills and snow and ice? You know what I'm saying? And so like they're like, we're gonna leave these people alone and let them do what they do. They mostly have to deal with like the desert faring cultures over here to their east, but otherwise like the river makes a natural barrier. The you know, the main people, the Knights of Idland, essentially, also help kick ass. So they're like, I'm not going to let you bully these people down here. So, like, fuck off. Go back to your desert dunes, dickhead. So that's that. And then here in this central area, we kind of have, like, this French-style kingdom. It is a little more of the refined, you know how, like, medieval France always held themselves to a higher degree. Especially, like, yeah, I don't think, forgive me for being horrendously wrong about my medieval history, I don't think there was really like an emperor of England. I know there's like a Holy Roman Emperor that held England and the British Isles at one point or whatever, but I don't think, you know, England itself ever had like an emperor or somebody who considered themselves an emperor. I could be wrong about that again, so don't like hold me to that. But you know how like the French always just kind of seemed higher up in the tier of like chivalry or like nobility or whatever compared to England. I don't know why. At least that's my thinking. So that's kind of what's going on here. They're kind of more pampered. Imagine the Tyrells if they had their own country. That's what's going on over here. They're their own country. They're very pampered. They kind of do whatever the fuck they want, whatever. I mean, I know they had a king, but I don't think they ever called themselves an empire. Fuck, literally the British Empire. Dumbass. Anyway, ignore me. I obviously don't know what I'm talking about. Now this area over here, there's actually a lot more rivers than what I put into the world map. But it's a very like fertile river land. Like there's rivers sprawling from both of these mountain ranges that just cover this entire area. This is known as Braywick County, despite the fact that it's fucking massive for a county. But the rivermen, they essentially rose up and broke away from this kingdom over here, this knightly French style kingdom, and they declared themselves independent, and now they rule their little land of rivers by themselves. But they're really rustic in the way that they live. I kind of imagine like a mix between the Riverlanders and the people of the Neck from Game of Thrones. So kind of like that rustic lifestyle, and they don't really have knights, but they do have just, river warriors who know what the fuck they're doing. And because of how treacherous the rivers are, not a lot of invasion forces manage to get here and, actively do any kind of damage against the people of Braywick. This was an individual county at one point until other surrounding counties within the rivers also teamed up with them. And so now the entire independent kingdom is known as the Braywick County. But the Braywickens, they kind of just, again, they do whatever the fuck they want. They really don't give a shit. They're constantly battling with these people, and they're constantly fighting off like the desert people who are trying to come into like the fertile river valley. There are a noble house of knights that dominate basically this mountain range right here within our main setting, and they're constantly battling against like raiding parties coming from Braywick County. There's a lot of animosity between the people of the mountain range and the river valley as well. So more like the Braywick Confederacy. I agree with that. I think that's pretty cool. But the thing about the people of like the Braywickin, they don't have such an expansive knowledge of like government hierarchy. Again, they live a very rustic lifestyle, and so their main focuses aren't essentially on education. It's more so like brute survival, you know what I'm saying? So they don't have like a standing military. They have a king, and they have like a few like notable like castle halls to call back to, I guess. But otherwise, like, they're very much just like river people. They don't have a standing army. They don't have noble houses. They kind of just live and exist however they fuck them want, I kind of like it. I think they're pretty cool. This is, in fact, for something I'm writing. I made a YouTube post about it the other day, but I'm planning on writing a book, fantasy novel. Don't know how that's going, if I'm being honest. I want to say I've got a 16-page prologue, which is actually pretty standard for most fantasy epics. And then I've got 4 POV chapters written so far. 3 of which are from the main characters, and 1 of them is from a supporting character. But so far it's pretty good. I'm really enjoying it. It is a first draft kind of deal, and I keep making the mistake of going back and adding more to the world building. So I have to go back and rewrite whole chapters, because now I have to implement this new method or new scheme of whatever the fuck I thought of in my brain, my little smooth brain. So the name of the book is actually going to be called the Chain of Oaths. And that has to do with a big part of the role play. But anyway, I do want to move on. I was kind of just describing some of the other cultures, essentially, that it's not part of the main setting. But the people who came over here, so I forgot what I named this continent. So this continent right here is known as Mornashi, and it's dominated by almost this Japanese style culture of people. And it's all very volcanic. Like, right here in the middle of this this kind of rib cage looking thing is this like big fertile river valley, but otherwise, like, a lot of these mountains are active volcanoes, especially up here in the main head, or it's called like Mornashi North and then Mornashi South. But the Mornashi people are all like very rustic, very I mean, they are very like feudalistic Japan, and there's like a lot of volcanoes and shit like that. I think they're actually pretty kick-ass, and they will make an appearance at one point. But I do want to move on to the actual main plot of the book, because all of this is just background lore. It's all just world building. But it's been fun. It's been fun. That's not what I meant to do. But here we are. So this is the main map. Here's like a publicized version of it that I created, which I thought was pretty interesting. So it essentially looks like it was a publication by the actual government. So this is our main setting. This is the Kingdom of Eidland. Eid, E-I-D, is like a rough German translation for oath. So it's essentially the Oath Lands. But the book title is called The Chain of Oaths. And the reason why is because we're going back and playing in on the fact that humanity started off, like our genesis, our creation myth, starts us off as slaves. We were slaves to the will of somebody else, and they used chains to enslave us to their will. We've broken free of those chains, and now as a culture, one of our, big knightly kingdoms have adopted the chain as a symbol of being honor bound by honor and bound by oaths rather than bound by slavery. And it goes a lot into, this concept of like choice and free will. You know what I'm saying? When we were slaves, we didn't have free will. We didn't have any kind of choice. We were created to be subservient. We've overthrown our masters, essentially our slave masters, and we've broken free of our chains. But what now is binding us to each other? What now binds us as humanity to keep us from slaughtering one another or striving for ultimate power the way that the Titans did way back when? And that's choice. These chains no longer represent being bound and choiceless, but we bound ourselves to our choices, to oaths, to one another. It's kind of it's meant to be like a connection, not so much like, binding your hands together, but binding you to your neighbor, binding you to your friends or your family. So I kept rolling with that concept of like the chains and everything like that. And I decided I wanted to step away from like the noble house arc kind of thing of like our nobility. How Game of Thrones does it, how Dune does it with House Atreides and House Harkonnen, etc., etc. So are the Titans still around? No. They do still kind of have an influence, but they don't exist in the physical realm. One of the big main plots, as part of our bad guys, spoiler alert, he wants to bring the Titans back. He feels like by overthrowing the Titans, we've disrupted the natural order of things, and now humanity is running rampant, doing whatever they want. They, we think very highly of ourselves and whatever, and with our free will, we've done ABC, XYZ, blah, blah, blah. And so he's pissed off, and he's like, fuck you guys, I'm not dealing with this. I'm bringing the Titans back, and I hope they wipe us all out. I hope they kill us, because we don't deserve this planet. It's like really weird. I haven't 100% fleshed it out, but that's kind of the direction that I'm going in. But no, so for a majority of it, a majority of the Titans are dead. They were slain in this Titan war. Those who did not die in the war, those who were not slain, they retreated into this purgatorial state called the Scar. Thus, we have the name of our world, Titan Scar. Kind of like an homage to our human victory over Titan kind, overthrowing our slave masters and becoming, the architects of the new world, essentially. I think that's pretty cool. I kind of like that concept. Excuse me. Sorry. Avery Weathers, it has been a while. Welcome back. That's crazy. Missed you. Anyway. So, this is where our main plot takes place. And again, we are stepping away from noble bloodlines. Nobody gives a shit who your dad was. Nobody gives a shit who your great-grand-uncle was who once ruled these lands as a king. Nobody cares. In this culture, It's not about bloodlines that make you noble. Uh it's about your oath. It's about the chain of oaths. Now the thing about the chain of oaths is that it's not just a spiritual thing. Like I could talk about the chain of oath and say, "Oh, I'm bound to the Duke of Coburg, Saxe Gotha. Um, I'm bound to Seth Molina. I'm bound to Sir Ignacio the Third." But what's actually tying you to that? You know what I'm saying? Like, and again, it plays into choice. Like I can say it, but backing it up with my actions is a choice. But beyond that, the chain of oaths itself is a physical representation as well. So in every castle and every keep, instead of having like noble last names and noble banners and sigils that represent each family or faction or kingdom, you have a physical representation of your chain. Now, obviously, longer chains means that you've upheld your oath the longest. The thing with this chain is there are different links, completely different links, depending on what faction it is. So if I'm up here in the Bronze Hills, obviously my chain, my oath chain, is going to be made out of bronze links. Now, if I'm over here in Iron Crown, it's obviously going to be made out of wrought iron, etc., etc. So there's still that sense of like, distinct identities, but they're no longer tying it into a noble bloodline, a sigil, or a surname or a last name. It's now the noble identity is now bound to the chain of oaths. You know what I'm saying? Because that is the big cultural centerpiece of Idland, essentially. So up here in the Bronze Hills, you have bronze chains, and you splay it out on your castle walls for everybody to see, essentially. Now your chain does have different links in it. You have the smaller, just basic ass iron chains or whatever, or iron links. Those are representations of how many years you've kind of like kept your oath, essentially. You know what I'm saying? So if I have been the ruler of the Bronze Hills for, I don't know, 50 years, I have 50 basic ass iron links attached to my specific chain. Now, how do you know it's my specific chain? Because other than the basic ass iron links that represent each year of your service, there is it's called like a successor link, or a lord link, essentially. So it's bigger, it's made out of a different material, and it's got like these different, I want to say like design choices added onto it to represent each lord. So if I have 30 years of military service, I have 3 notches carved into the side of my lord link, and then it's got my 50 chains, or my 50 links of oathbound service. You know what I'm saying? And then if I have X amount of children, I can have another representation of my children added onto my link. So the main link, or the lord link itself, that represents me in my chain of oath, in my family's chain of oath, is very specific to me, which I think is pretty interesting. Again, it is weird. Strung across the chest or attached to their weapons, yes. Wouldn't surnames still exist though, like for occupations? Yes, also yes. But that's more of like a low-born kind of thing. Because the common folk, there's so many of them, that's why they're common. That's how they would differentiate themselves from one another. Otherwise, we are pulling a lot of inspiration from the Last Kingdom as well. So people are known as like, I am, so-and-so of Bronze Hall, or I'm so-and-so of Black Salen. You know what I'm saying? Like, there was never really like a surname for King Alfred or for Uhtred. He was just Uhtred of Bebbanburg, and it was King Alfred of Wessex, or Alfred, King of Wessex. You know what I'm saying? So we're kind of following in that same footsteps, again, staying away from the noble bloodline and keeping more so in touch with like the main core of our theme, which is like, being like binding yourself to an oath based off of choice. You know what I'm saying? I know they did. I'm not saying that they didn't. I'm saying that we're not going to. Like, and even then, the only time you really hear anybody in the Last Kingdom speak on Alfred of Wessex with a surname, it's Alfred Rex, but that's literally just Latin for king. So he's basically just saying Alfred King, but Rex wasn't his surname, because then you didn't have, I guess you could call him like Edward Rex, but Rex wasn't his surname. You know what I'm saying? So regardless, I understand that they did in real life, but in this, we're not going to have surnames the same way. Now, there are oath names, and essentially it's kind of a right reserved by like the highest ranking members of the nobility, so like the high lords of Iron Crown and Windlane and Maelor and so on and so forth. And then of course the king of it all, they will have essentially an oath name. It's something that you can declare yourself that adds to your legitimacy, you know what I'm saying? But it also differs, between each new successor. So for example, the founder of the Bronze Hills, who resides in Bronze Hall, his name was Brennan Bronzemere. Now Bronzemere is kind of like the Bronze Friend or the Bronze. It was something like the Bronze Home. He was known for his hospitality, so his surname or his oath name, something he chose for himself, is Brennan Bronzemere. So Bronzemere would essentially be his oath name. Now his daughter Iris takes over, and she's the first lady of the Bronze Hills, and so she leans into that identity. She calls herself Iris Bronzyra. So it kind of shares that same base as bronze. So that's how you can differentiate families or family titles. But essentially your full surname or last name is yours to define, based off of your oath. So she calls herself Iris Bronzyra, which is a rough translation of the Bronze Lady. So that's kind of like her character arc. That's her story arc. My family got interns. Thanks, Medici Blood. You're done. You're done. But anyway, so that's that. It is kind of complicated and convoluted. I'm still working my way into refining it and making it make more sense, and being a little easier to follow. Oh, was he known as the House of Wessex? I didn't know that. I didn't know that. That's pretty interesting. Alfred of the House of Wessex. That's still pretty cool, because you can consider yourself like, I am, Brennan of the House of the Bronze Hills, or the House of Bronze Hall. And then, I am Balaric of the House of Iron Crown. That's still pretty cool, because those are really cool common names. But what I wanted to do was kind of add this mysticism behind the power of a name, the weight behind your chosen name. Because your name also depends or ties in spiritually with your oath as well. You know what I'm saying? Now, obviously, the most common oaths are that of fealty and of governance and everything like that. There's a hierarchy. Everybody swears oath to the king and blah, blah, blah. Now, there's a way that you can tend to your oath, essentially, making sure, because obviously all of the serfs or all of the peasants, they are oath bound to the next higher up, the counts, and then all the counts are bound to the dukes, and all the dukes are bound to the high lords, and all the high lords are bound to the king. You know what I'm saying? But it's not a one-way street. There are certain lords who think it's a one-way street. Everybody at the bottom, anybody whose link is lower than mine, they owe me everything. But then you have people like Lord Brennan Bronzemere, the bronze friend, who tends to his link or attends to his chain like a gardener would his roses. Essentially, he cares for it, and he realizes it's a two-way street. I've got to take care of my oath to my people the same way they take care of their oath to me, and so on and so forth. So yeah, the feudal system. Thank you, Jesus. I don't know why I was struggling to think of that word, but anyway. That is the most difficult part that I'm trying to implement here. But again, so the oath name, I was trying to add some kind of mystic weight to it. So it's something that's not commonly spoken, but it's something that you can swear on your name. I wanted to have our very own, I am Paul Muad'Dib Atreides, his surname is Atreides, but he also calls himself Muad'Dib. So it's kind of adding in that kind of, I guess, spiritual mysticism and everything like that beyond just existing in a feudalistic bloodline. I am Muad'Dib. You know, I am the one who points the way. So that's what I was trying to implement with our oath names, but I wanted it to be very, like, I guess, fucking subjective is the word I was thinking of. You know what I'm saying? So not everybody is going to have an oath name, only the most powerful lords. So going into that, I do want to say, just looking at the map, physically, the map itself. So in all capital letters, you have the territories of the High Lordships. Think of the Lord Paramountcies from Game of Thrones. So Maelorn is our Stormlands. Newport is our White Harbor. Windlane is I don't know, just other lands. I think there's like 10 in total. But then you also have like these these big red letters, but they're not all capitalized. That's because this isn't a high lordship. This is a duchy. So this, the Duchy of the Bronze Hills, is actually an archduchy. It's big enough and it's powerful enough to be self-sustaining without having to bind itself directly to a high lord. That's why Brennan Bronzemere is such a badass and cares for his people, because he doesn't have that many obligations ahead of him, you know, or above him. It's him and then the king. Now, he doesn't have all the same power or the rights as a High Lord, like the High Lord of Iron Crown, but he's got, you know, his own special, like, contract, I guess, you know, or contractual, like, rights, essentially. So, we have the Archduchy of the Bronze Hills. There is the Archduchy of the Scarwood, but this is actually bound to the High Lordship of Axony. Originally, I called this Saxony, because I wanted these two areas, Windlane and Saxony, to be a rough representation of like Wessex and then Mercia. But I decided to change it up a little bit because Saxony was a little too on the nose for like the Anglo-Saxons. And so I changed it to Axony, keeping kind of like the same, you know, XSAN sound. You get it, you know? And then the subculture of people here are known as the Axons, or the Sons of the Axe, which I think was pretty cool, giving them a bit of that ancient Anglo-Saxon meets Danish culture that we see in you know, The Last Kingdom. So this is a mix of all the best fantasy stories. I appreciate that. Is this about the new campaign? No, this is something different. Welcome in, Deadshot. It's good to see you, bro. But yeah, so yeah, so archduchies, high lordships. Yeah, the Scarwood is its own thing. Yorwood used to be its own thing, but it was so small that over time they kind of lost their autonomy and kind of got absorbed by Windlane. Not maliciously, it's just one of those things that happened. Newport is actually really, really small, so the territory itself used to include the lands of the these woods right here in Oromar. This little symbol right here is actually a ruin, so there's a little bit of history there, but this is the ruins of Oromar. So they no longer hold these lands, obviously, but the lands of Newport are essentially just from this river, this White Rush River, over here to the castle of White Rush, and that's it. Very, very small high lordship, but they are very, like, industrialized, very port city. Think kind of like Duskendale or White Harbor. Very, very powerful, autonomous ports, essentially, or like Bravos, even. You know what I'm saying? It's its own free city, and has its own autonomy, its own standing army, shit like that. So it's kind of the same concept here, essentially. And then over here you have Maelorn. Maelorn is essentially our Stormlands, except the people of Maelorn are a bunch of assholes. They suck. There's nothing redeeming about the Maelorns at all. I know everybody likes the Baratheons, and I wanted these people not to be like that. They have a very, like, tumultuous temperament. They are very storm-like in their personality. They're mean and angry and lash out and shit like that. So there is a lot of bad blood between Stromgap and Yorwood, because the Yorwoods actually used to belong to Maelorn in like the ancient days of like the Age of Kings, essentially. Until they sided with Windlane, or they sought help from Windlane to push back the Maelorn forces, and then they won their autonomy for a time before being absorbed by Windlane. Iron Crown, I think, is one of my favorite areas. The Bronze Hills is where a lot of our main characters are going to, kind of flock to. This is our equivalent of like the North, except it's not cold up here. Think of like, I guess the Royces is kind of where I took the inspiration from. The Royces of the Vale. Iron Crown. Now, Iron Crown is where I drew a lot of inspiration from the Baratheons. Iron Crown is the Baratheon houses if they didn't exist in the Stormwoods, but instead they existed in the Vale. And these, it's known as Iron Crown because of all the rich deposits of iron. And it's almost, they found like this mountain right here, right in the center of the Iron Crown mountain range, where it's just a solid black mountain of pure fucking iron. And so they built a castle literally into the side of this mountain, like right up at the peak, basically, and they named it Blackspire, and that is now the seat of Iron Crown, of the House of Iron Crown. I like that, Duke. You brought that up, and I think that's how I'm gonna make it make more sense. People have common names, and then they have oath names. Their oath name is something that's invoked in like when you're swearing an oath or when you're declaring war, something that has weight to it. If you need to say something or you need to put weight behind your words, you swear it upon your oath name. You know what I'm saying? And then otherwise, like, if people are just saying, hey, look who's here, it's so-and-so of the House of Iron Crown, that's going to be the more common way of making it. So I appreciate you bringing that up, because I really didn't know that he was known as the House of Wessex, which is really, really cool, actually. So that actually adds a little bit to that. So royalties for the Duke. I love that. Thank you, my friend. But anyway, so they are in fact the Baratheons. If they lived on the mountains, they make their armor out of all black steel. They are very, think of the Starks if the Starks were just mean, They're not evil, they're not cruel or malicious, they're just mean. Very pragmatic, very like curt and cold, and don't give a shit about your feelings. If it's not something that's gonna help benefit my house, I don't want to fucking hear you talk, like, please. But they also get a lot of that from the rebellions and all the raids coming in from Braywick County. Obviously, there is a ruin over here called Old Braywick as well. There's a lot of bad blood and history going on here. Black Salin is off on the side of this peak facing towards Braywick County, where they're kind of like the first line of defense from the Braywickins. They have since raised up a couple other minor houses of Iron Crown and have posted them up on this hill. You will notice that it skips every other hill, which is our territory versus their territory, and that is part of like the historical treatises. So because the foothills are geographically attached to mountains, but they're also a source of the rivers that feed into Braywick County. They said you can't claim all the hills because the hills house the rivers that we have a claim to. So contractually, your territories can have every other hill, and we will hold every other hill. You know what I'm saying? So I think that was pretty interesting. We will see the Braywickin make an appearance in the main plot of the story. Not like the whole thing, but and saying the oath name for nothing, it's like a great insult, at least very, very bad scene, like a taboo. Yes, so Maelorn is incredibly malicious, and so there's a moment where Brennan Bronzemere, he's like talking to these people, he's being very serious, he's like, I gotta warn you about this thing that is coming, or this thing that I saw, and Maelorn is just like, fuck you, your hospitality sucks, your hall is a piece of shit, You know, you don't even have gold here. What's wrong with you? Poor ha poor type shit. And he calls him out by his oath name, and it's almost like the whole court just like clutches their pearls, and they're like, how fucking dare you? And that's when Iron Crown steps up and he's like, hey, show some motherfucking respect. I understand that we're not all gonna get along or whatever, where there's a lot of bad blood between us, despite the fact that we're all countrymen, but Bronzemere being my neighbor, don't talk shit about him in his own hall. Like, we're not fixing to do that. And so that shows a lot of like his personality versus their personality versus his personality, because he doesn't lash out back. He doesn't, react in any way. He's like typical. That was a typical reaction of you to do, basically, calling me out like that. Aw, Duke's gotta leave already? Fuck. I love you, my friend. I'm sorry. Sorry I yapped the whole time. But, sorry. Anyway, so that's that. These four territories up here, Maelorn, Newport, the Bronze Hills, and Iron Crown, make up essentially our fantasy version of like the northern culture. They believe in hospitality. They believe in martial prowess. They're a little more of like the old gods aesthetic. They very much have like Bronze Age style armor, stuff like that. Or not Bronze Age the way we know it, but Bronze Age in this. Again, think of the ancient Starks, think of like Vikings and Norse style cosmetics. That's kind of what we're looking at here, but not exactly, and not to the T. And they're not savage Viking culture. They do still have like very knightly ideals. This entire country is known as the Kingdom of Idland, land of knights and oaths. So knighthood is a big central core part of their identity here as a nation as well. Yes, the Iron Hills from Lord of the Rings is exactly what I was thinking of. Now, I do have a little castle hill. A little castle hill known as the Duke of Ironfoot. I'm fucking mad at myself. But yeah, so Ironfoot right here is in fact inspired by Dane Ironfoot of the Iron Hills, from Lord of the Rings. So he's gonna be, very hard ass kind of man. He's part of the Bronze Hills, territory, so he's part of the Archduchy of the Bronze Hills, but because he's so close in proximity to Iron Crown, he does kind of have that like rough, pragmatic nature, you know what I'm saying? So it's gonna be pretty interesting. So down here in Windlane, I did draw inspiration from Mercia. While I was doing a lot of this research for this project, I was rewatching Game of Thrones, I rewatched Lord of the Rings, I rewatched The Last Kingdom. And I noticed a lot of inspiration that I really enjoyed from Mercia, from The Last Kingdom. Mercia and Wessex, obviously. There's a lot of bad blood between them, despite the fact that they're literally countrymen. You know what I'm saying? Like, they are both Anglo-Saxons. In this sense, they both belong to the Axan culture, the Sons of the Axe. Now, these guys obviously went north and learned the ways of hospitality from their northern neighbors, except for Maelorn, because fuck those guys, they're just a bunch of assholes. But they essentially, like, that's why sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. The current capital of Windlane is Windmere. The previous capital of Windlane was Hearthguard, because of the big cultural influences that they got from the hospitality of their northern neighbors. So they created they built this castle right here in the center of their lands, where all of their neighbors can come and convene, and we can, host feasts and tournaments and just kind of be buddy and be neighborly with one another and everything like that. But because of a lot of bad blood between Axony and Windlane, they've had to shift a lot of their focus, which kind of turned Windmere into a more well-developed, capital for them. So it kind of just made more sense for the ruling family of Windlane to shift from Hearthguard into Windmere. Now again, because they are neighbors and they're of the same subculture, being the Axe Sons. There is a historical event I want to talk to you about, which is known as the I forgot the official name I gave it. It was like the Axonian Uprising, essentially, or the Uprising of Axes. Like, so the Axon, fuck. I'm struggling here because in my brain I have two different terms. The territory itself is called Axony, but I don't know which I like better for the name of the culture, or when I'm addressing multiple people of this culture. You know what I'm saying? So like, so if we're talking about the north of Game of Thrones, we call them Northerners. When I'm talking about the people of Axony, are they Axons or are they Axonians? Which one sounds better? I feel like Axonians just kind of feels better to say. So I'm gonna use Axonians, because Axons, for whatever reason, just does not do it for me. So Axonians, there is a historical event called the Axonian Uprising. A person from Saxe Crown, which was the previous capital of Axony, they rose up, declared themselves king of all the Axonians, radicalized their people, and fought against the other subcultures of Idland. And they were like, fuck you, we're not gonna follow your rule anymore, we're going back to the age of axes. So the Axonian people, who saw themselves as righteous cultural revolutionaries, they call their little rebellion the age of axes, where they obviously try to revert back to that time period and that culture, that cultural significance. Now the people who fought against the uprising, the loyalists of Idland, they called it the Axonian uprising. Obviously, it's the same way as like there's the War of the Usurper or Robert's Rebellion. You know what I'm saying? So the Axonians, they lost. They sucked. They got shit on horrendously. There was a final stand done here by this subculture of people called Surians. Now they came from the east. Where's my world map? Wrong way. So they came from the east. So if this is Axony right here, the Surians came from the east, where the this other knightly kingdom is. So a subculture, very, very small subculture of people came this way. They migrated over here and they landed over here on this hill, which was named Surya Hill. Now, because the Surians did not want to side with the Axonians, they climbed this hill essentially, and they butchered everybody in the village. Now, of the Surian people that lived here on the Surian Hill, there was a number of knights who brought with them, these brand new radicalized ideals of like knighthood being, a tool to service the people. It's not something to add prestige to one's own, self. It's not something to add strength to another person's military or their personal prowess or their nobility or whatever. It's a tool to be used to service the people. Like, not everybody can be a knight, which means that it's the knight's responsibility to protect everybody. You know what I'm saying? Because not everybody's going to have the training they need to be able to protect themselves the way that a knight can. So a knight's responsibility is to protect everybody, because not everybody can be a knight. So there's a small group of people here, a small group of knights who defended the Surians literally down to the last man. Like they stood against countless waves of Axonian rebels, and they were all slain in the end. All except like a small number. I haven't decided the minutia of it. But essentially, they held off the rebels long enough for the rest of the country to mobilize and smash in on the Axonian territories and force them into surrender. So the remaining knights, the remaining Surian knights, they built a castle hill. They built a castle here on Surya Hill. I'm mad as hell, bro. Like, why am I struggling to speak right now? But yes, so the remaining Surian knights, They built a castle here on Surya Hill, and they called it Surya Hall. And this is where they formed this kind of neutral order of knights known as the Order of the 100 Seats. And the reason why is because it's our equivalent of the Knights of the Round Table. There are 100 seats on this knightly council, each one filled by a different member of the knighthood order. In the current day and age of this world, there are roughly 100,000 knights in this neutral order. They don't swear to any banner. They don't swear to any faction or kingdom or whatever. They are seen as their own sovereign, autonomous, like, controlling body. Now, Surya Hall is also, coincidentally, where the new ruling family of Axony lives. The Axonians who rose up in rebellion and radicalized their people. They weren't essentially put to the sword. The rebel leader was executed, but the rest of the family was disgraced. Their oath name was stripped away from them, and they are no longer, Saxe Crown is no longer the capital of their lands. It is now Surya Hall. So that kind of ties the governing body of Ireland into the same, it binds the order, the neutral order, in legitimacy with the governing body of Ireland. So now it's like we share the same capital, and now the new ruling family of Axony also has the support of the 100,000 knights of this neutral order who will absolutely bust down on your ass and fuck you up if you try to act up again. You know what I'm saying? So so we have this neutral order of knights known as the 100 seats, and they essentially like roam around, and they kind of just do shit, make sure that the life is being lived in a swell way. Whenever anybody tries to rise up or act up or whatever, the ruling government of Ireland, they'll call upon the 100 seats, and the 100 seats will convene, and they'll decide whether or not they want to get involved. If it's a big enough threat that threatens the balance of peace and prosperity within the nation. And I think it'll be pretty interesting. Now, it's not like the Night's Watch. You don't have to swear off women. You are allowed to hold lands and titles. Those people are known as Lord Marshals or Knight Marshals, I think. So you can be a knight of the order and still hold like territories and lands and castles and stuff. Totally recognizable, totally legitimate, totally legal. You can have families as well. It's just your family member will not inherit your seat on the council. You have to earn it. It is merit based 100%. The Knights Templar, essentially, yes. Now they too, in Surya Hall, the order themselves, they also have their chain of oaths displayed in the castle walls. Theirs is a little bit different because they don't bind themselves to the government directly. They don't have like a singular link or like chain link, essentially signifying like the what's it called, like the government hierarchy or the feudalistic system. Theirs is like 100,000 different links hanging from the ceiling, where it of like varying lengths and varying whatevers, and it represents like the different knights, essentially. Some of the longest ones are revered because it's like, oh, this belonged to Sir so and so from way back when, who did ABCXYZ. Like look at how long his chain is, because he was a knight for X amount of years and he's done ABCXYZ type of deeds and stuff like that. So it's a different form of like what's it called, of like written history. You know what I'm saying? Which I think is pretty interesting. I like the place of Everwatch. It has a nice name. Yeah. Where did it go? Everwatch. Yeah. So again, going back to the world map, so you have this mighty kingdom of like French style knights, essentially. So Everwatch is kind of smack dab right here in the middle of the Emerald Marches. The French style kingdom is known as Cheval, Cheval. What the fuck? Cheval. Eval. Who the fuck is Al? So Shevel, the kingdom of Shevel. They are also known as the Chevalian, the people or the culture. And they, these lands being like borderlands, they're known as marches, kind of like the Dornish marches, and the Stormland marches in Game of Thrones, A, B, C, X, Y, Z. So the Chevalian, use this pass, the Emerald Pass, or the I think it's called like the Emerald Gap is what I named it. So they use the Emerald Gap to like march through in an invasion attempt way back in ancient history. Obviously the Eidlanders pushed them back and they said no, fuck you. But a lot of that culture being on the borderlands kind of seeped into the lands here. So you have the Emerald March, which is actually this really long strip. It does not include the Scarwood. So it goes from Leroy Keep, like this kind of woodland area, all the way down to Stonevale. It does not include First Gate, and it only includes the western side of these mountain ranges, down to Greenmont, and then cuts off right here at these woods. It does not include Mont's Edge. Goes up to the Marchway, Bitter Ridge, and then south of the Scarwood, and then back up again to Leroy Keep. So that is the Emerald March. And they are known, this subculture of people is known as the Marshevlian, people. So it's not the Emerald Gap, it's the Marshevlian Gap. The Marshevlian Gap. It's kind of Marshevlian Gap. What the fuck, brother? So it's kind of a mix of like the Chevalian culture and the Marcher culture. So it's Marshevlian. But yeah, so these are the lands of the Marshevlian people. This is the Marshevlian Gap. This is the Emerald March. And then Everwatch is a minor house and a duchy that controls the Marshevlian Gap. They are constantly ever watching for the next invasion of the Chevalian people. Are there any major mercenary companies? No, and that is because I haven't thought of a solid reason, but I wanted the Order of 100 Seats to be like the main, like, if you can't rely on your government, you don't call mercenaries, you call the Order. The Order is going to come in and handle shit. Now, while the Order is oftentimes also tied into bureaucracy and dumb shit, most of the time they're going to dispatch a knight or two and get shit done because they're essentially like medieval Jedi. They're just that good at what they do. They're that strong. They're that powerful. They're that well trained and honorable. You know what I'm saying? That it would take two, Order Knights is what they're nicknamed. They're called Order Knights. It would take two Order Knights to do what any other number of Banner Knights can do. Now, Banner Knights are nicknamed so because they are bound to any one particular house. So there's a character who currently serves in Bronze Hall. He was once an Order Knight, but has sworn an oath directly to the Lord of the Bronze Hills in Bronze Hall, and now he is a Banner Knight. Because he no longer serves the Order, he serves a particular family, or a particular, faction. So he's now known as a Banner Knight. Now, this could be a really good segue into the main conflict of our plot. So I'm going to leave it up to you guys. Do you guys want me to adjust what we're talking about and go into the main conflict, the Banner Knights versus Order Knights, or do you want me to continue talking about the different regions of the physical map? Is there religion in this world? Yes. You would think a mercenary company would set up in this land or at least have some connections in this region. Oh, they do. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that there aren't any. I'm just saying that they're not many well-known ones. You know what I'm saying? Like, there is no Golden Company. There is no, Hill Tribesmen or whatever. Like, maybe there are, but they're not named like that specifically, and they're not very well known. Now, during our main conflict, the ability to, call upon like mercenary companies or to even form one in any significant way will be a lot easier But again, that kind of plays into the main conflict, this Order Knight versus Banner Knight conflict as well. Um, that being said, um, essentially the main plot. So we follow along Sir Brennan, or sorry, Lord Brennan. Um, Now he is technically an Archduke, but they don't call him Archduke Brennan. They call him Lord. So anybody who's part of the nobility and holds lands, even if it's just a county, is known as Lord. So they're prefaced by, or prefixed, I guess, by the title of being a Lord. So Lord Brennan Bronzemere, he's out here in Newcastle, or in Newport Harbor. He's waiting on a ship. He sent off a merchant ship, like, I don't know, weeks ago. And he's like, hey, I'm waiting on my stuff. I'm here to pick up. Where's my ship at? The harbor master's like, no idea. They're fucking half a day late. Haven't seen them. And so he's sitting there anxious, and he's got this Order Knight who's with him, this guy from the Order, who was sent to Bronze Hall to serve Brennan Bronzemere, to train up his household guard. Obviously, having an Order Knight with their superior training and superior martial skills and their superior honor, come in and train your men is like a huge boost to your military service. It's like, bro, that's fucking kick ass. So Sir Adrian from the Order is here in Bronze Hall. He's serving Brennan Bronzemere, travels with him to Newport Harbor, and he's serving as his bodyguard right now. So he's sitting there and he's waiting, and everybody's like super nervous. And Sir Adrian, he's a veteran of like many battles and everything like that. He's slain Oathbreakers in 1v1 combat since he was like 16 years old, and now I think he's like 22 at this point. And he's like, there's something going on here that makes me really fucking nervous, and I don't like it. So eventually the ship rolls into harbor, and everybody's in a panic as they're coming off the ship, and he's like, what the fuck is going on? And the captain of the ship, he's dragging off this body of a man, this body, plops him down on the harbor in front of this massive crowd of people. And it's this knight. You can tell he's a knight because he's wearing armor, but it's like half charred and melted, fused into his skin. His leg is like missing. He's missing a leg, but the flesh is burnt down to the bone, and the bone is like melted, you know. So it's like a weird round knob of a charred bone hanging off from, like, you know, burnt flesh and skin, and like, you know, half fused metal like stuck to his flesh and shit like that. So he's like, they're looking at him, they're figuring, they're like, what the fuck is going on? And the guy wakes up, the knight, he wakes up, and he's like, there's this black warlord coming. Nobody knows who he is, but, you know, I come from out east over here, so this is where this kind of Spanish culture is, this knightly Spanish culture. So he comes from around here. He says this castle, Kelmara, has fallen to the black warlord, and he wields a fire that consumes everything. It melts steel, and it shatters walls, and it, you know, it's a monster that, sorry, my PC started like howling at me. But he's like, it just consumes everything. It's this darkness that, or this black cloud that, like, you know, covers the sky, blots out the sun, and the fire just, you know, completely wiped this castle off the face of the earth. And then he dies. You know, he passes away from his injuries. So this, like, shakes Sir Adrian to his core. He's never seen anything do that to steel plate armor. Up until this point in history, knights have been the dominating power of military significance in the world. They have not found anything that could top being a knight in full plate armor. So they take this information back to Bronze Hall. They summon their neighbors, essentially, because they're trying to do this quick. They can't summon an entire council and wait for a month for people to come all the way north from Fang. So what they do is they summon their neighbors, even like the dukes and the counts. And he's like, hey, here's what we saw. Here's what he said. I don't know if it's real or not, but we have to prepare ourselves, essentially, if we're being invaded. And so, of course, Maelorn is here, and he's a piece of shit. And he's like, Haktua on your hospitality. fuck you. You're just using this as a scare tactic so that you can swell your ranks. Why else would you have Sir Adrian here from the Order training up your men just for you to turn around and flaunt your strength in front of our faces? And basically the entire council falls apart, and everybody's like, oh, well, if that's the case, then I want more knights in my ranks. I need to go and grab more knights and blah, blah, blah. Now, Sir Adrian being there in Bronze Hall, seeing what he sees, he obviously invites his commander and a number of knights to join in this council over here. So while this council is going on, the Order Knights have a representative there beyond just Sir Adrian. It's Sir Adrian's commander. So he sees it, and he's there with his Order Knights, and he's like, this is a shitty fucking display of honor. You all ought to be ashamed of yourselves acting this way in front of the Lord and his hospitality. And then all these minor lords and nobles, they start falling onto their knees and like kissing the feet of these Order Knights. And he's like, I will pay you in riches. I will give you land and titles. I will give you my daughter's hand in marriage if you join my ranks, if you become my knight. And everybody starts doing this. So this essentially kicks off the main conflict of our plot and the central question of why I created this world in the first place. And that question is, what would happen if in a medieval setting we had a nuclear arms race? Now, nukes in this case being knights. Everybody's trying to grab knights for their army. Knights are the dominant power. They said, do you see what happened to this knight? Well, what happens if I have 100 knights? And then Maelorn is over here like, 100 knights on my border? I don't fucking think so. And he's gonna get 150 knights. But now Windlane is nervous, and he's like, fuck no. If you have 150 knights, you can take my land. So now I need 200 knights. And it just creates this massive bloat of false knighthood, because now they start knighting people left and right. And they're like, see, now I have 500 knights in my ranks. If they can't get the real deal, even though, let's face it, once people start paying for knighthood, a lot of these Order Knights, they abandon the Order in order to go and get rich, basically. They're going to go sell their services. They're going to go whore themselves out for money so that they can get rich while people beg for their services, for their martial prowess, and for their strength. So it's essentially this big, like, nuclear arms race, essentially, of knighthood. And that's kind of feeding into this big civil strife. So that's the main civil war arc that's going on here. We're brewing civil war now. People are, hoarding knights and warriors to their ranks so that they can not be overtaken by their neighbors or whatever out of, like, fear and shit like that. And all the while in the West, there's this black warlord out here with some mysterious weapon made of fire that he is using to conquer everything. So all of that takes place within the prologue, the first 16 pages of the book. It sounds like a lot, but it's not that clunky, I promise. It's actually pretty well written for my first draft, so I'm going to give myself a pat on the back for that one. Yeah, now are more knights than lands. Yeah, exactly. That's essentially what it is. But yeah, so that feeds into the main Civil War arc. And then the entire time, they're panicking over here, and they're trying to, like, size up their neighbors in this fucking, like, Mexican standoff type shit. Over here in, like, the Spanish Isles, there's this warlord that's, like, actually brewing up for war and conquering the lands of the Spanish Isles. And the whole thing is shrouded in mystery. And the entire time, the big, like, the big twist or whatever, the big secret plot point is that the Black Warlord himself has actually infiltrated Eidlander society. He is a character that we meet in POV chapters, and he's someone who actively is, like, fueling this civil war of Eidland. He wants to get them to tear themselves apart so that he can come in with his new weapon and just conquer everything. So, that's where we're at, essentially. The little island at the bottom of the island map. So we have one of our high lordships down here is called the Phantom Isles. It is not the Iron Islands. And in fact, there's actually like a couple of like literally just like five tiny little islands, and then the Phantom Coast, which is essentially just the I forgot what I named this river. It's like the Crab's Cut, because it's kind of like flowing in from this here, which is the known. It's like a landmass known as the Crab's Claw, but the kingdom that inhabits it is called Cangreal, which is like a rough Spanish for like king crab or like royal crab. So Kang something is like crab, and then like Real is Spanish for like royalty or king. So it's Cangreal is the kingdom. But so you have the Crab's Cut River and everything south of that, including these you know, these islands are all part of the Phantom Isles. And they're known as the Phantom Isles because there's this like constant mist that just shrouds like the ocean down here. It's just always there. It's ever present. Nobody knows why. It's not anything like malicious or whatever, but it does cause a lot of superstition. So they're very superstitious folk down here in the Phantom Isles. They claim that beasts of ice will wash in on the tide, and they'll have to fight off against like bears made out of ice or whatever, or dragons made out of ice that fly in on the frozen tide and shit like that. It's all superstition. There's no truth behind it. It's not a major part of the arc or anything. There is an Elder Scrolls reference here, so this is the city of Cold Harbor. It is just a harbor city or a port city, and they do kind of have a lot of dealings. They're off the map, but the Thracian League, that kind of Grecian peninsula where they're merchant states. So that's pretty interesting. No White Walkers. It is kind of inspired by that a little bit. It's like the Iron Islands if they were the Night's Watch watching for the White Walkers essentially. But it's just superstition. There are no actual White Walkers or any like ice monsters coming in on the tides. It's all just superstition. It's just a lot of that is added in for like lore flavoring and like cultural flavor. But the main plot of this is the Black Warlord and the nightly civil war that we're facing here, the shattering of the chain of oaths, basically. And that's what we're getting at here. So from the prologue, 5 years pass by. 5 years, because it gives us enough time to kill Brennan, Lord Brennan of the Bronze Hills. He was already an old man. He has 2 children to supplant him, but he dies. So he is now or the new Lord of Bronze Hall is his son Ian, who has not claimed a oath name yet. He has not earned it, but he is part of the problem. He's a 16-year-old kid stepping into the Archduchy of or Archdukedom of the Bronze Hills, and he's doing everything wrong. He's knighting in a bunch of like random people and ne'er-do-wells and mercenaries and sell swords so that he can swell his ranks. And his sister Iris is like, well, this fucking sucks. Like all of the warmth and hospitality and love that I used to feel in my father's hall are now gone, essentially. And she fucking hates it. And so she's, being bitter about it and whatever during this whole mass knighting ceremony where like 100 men are being knighted in Bronze Hall. And she goes to leave when the herald calls out a familiar name, Sir Adrian of the Order. And so she turns back and she sees Sir Adrian kneeling before her brother, and she's all pissed off because she's like, we haven't seen you in 5 years. Our father passed away and you never showed yourself, and now here you are expecting us to grant you a knighthood. And her brother Ian, the new Lord of the Bronze Hills, he's like, fuck you, sister. Like, we need knights, and he's an Order knight. He's served with us before, so now he's going to be loyal to us. I don't see an issue. So she protests. Ian is pissed off that, she's like challenging him because she's the older sister, but he's the firstborn male. So he's like, fuck you. I'm the Lord of the Bronze Hills. Sir Adrian, if you want to be knighted under my banner, you're going to go and take my sister and lock her in a room, and you're going to serve as her personal bodyguard until I'm satisfied with your service. So that's going to add a lot of character tension right there as well. The goal, however, is to build Adrian up to be kind of like Aldhelm, how Aldhelm is to Ethelfled in The Last Kingdom. And then, of course, Iris is equal to Ethelfled of Mercia. And what she does with Mercia in the show is essentially what Iris is going to do to the Bronze Hills here. So that's one character arc. I forgot where I was going with that. But yeah, that's like the main part of it. But yes, 5 years between the prologue and the actual start of the plot. Also gives 5 years for our Black Warlord to infiltrate and become an established part of the government of Eidland in a manner that doesn't draw attention to himself, but that also implants him exactly where he needs to be to help tear the world asunder and, pave the way for his nuclear weapon to come in and make knighthood obsolete. He said, look at all the knights that you have. Look at how easy it was for you to kill each other. And now that you're weakened and you have no knights, here's my brand new nuclear toy that I'm going to come in and wipe your fucking asses with. And I'm very excited about it. Now, the main character is Iris. Iris is one of our main characters. Our other main character, he's kind of our Jon Snow type deal. He is this young kid named Lucien, Lucien, Lucien. He's an orphan. He's not a bastard. He doesn't know who his parents are, but he's always dreamed of being a knight. His ideology of being a knight comes from these storybooks that he has in this orphanage that he grew up with. He is now 14 years old, and, this roaming knight comes by and he's like, hey, we're having an open audition, should make you feel nervous. We're having an open audition for squires to, if you impress us enough, you can become a squire and we'll take you on and you could become a knight potentially within a couple of years. So he jumps at the opportunity. He leaves the orphanage and this knight meets up with his other Banner Knight buddies, grabs this kid and fucking chucks him into this big ass mud pit. Like, literally like a pit of mud with a bunch of other kids and tells them to fight. And he said the last one alive will be a knight or will be squired. And so it's a brutal, all these kids, varying ages, like real young kids as young as like 8 or 9. And then, this big brutish kid, this big ginger kid from fucking wherever, as old as like 16 or something. And they're just duking it out in this mud pit. Now, Lucien, he's not very strong. He is an orphan, and he doesn't know how to fight. But he's scrawny. He's a bit taller than he should be for being 14. And he suffers from incredibly hot-headed anger issues. The tiniest fucking thing will set him off, and he'll black the fuck out, and he will absolutely wreck shit. And he does that in this fight. But the big ginger kid who's taller and bigger and stronger than he is, kicks his ass. He's currently being choked out in the mud. And as he's losing consciousness, this voice comes in and he's like, well, you're a piece of shit for doing this. And he kicks off the kid with like no effort. And it's this weird like hooded guy. All the Banner Knights are like shocked to see him and they're all like on edge. And they're like, hey, what the fuck are you doing here? This isn't for you. Like, get the fuck out of here. And he's like, no, fuck you. All the other kids are dead. Take the big one. I'll take the scrawny one. And he grabs the kid and he leaves. Now, Lucien is like, well, what the fuck is going on here? I don't know what the hell is happening. And so the knight, he introduces himself as Sir A. Literally just the letter A. So he's Sir A. And he's like, you're basically here to serve. Like, I need somebody to do menial tasks for me. I'm not going to train you to be a squire, but your choices are pretty limited. You can go back and take your chances with the big fucking kid over there, in which case they might actually kill you, or you can just come with me and, help carry my shit. And he, he's got like 2 swords with him, and he throws like the big heavy sword at the scrawny ass kid. And he's like, here, carry this, carry your weight. If you lose it, I'll kill you. If you unsheath it, I'll kill you with it. And that's the last chapter that I left off on. Or for his POV anyway. So that's Lucien, our other main character. He is an aspiring knight. His ideologies, compared to the growing darkness inside him, compared to the harsh reality he faces of what knighthood is, are gonna pull him in a bunch of different directions. But essentially, his main character arc is about choice. Like, what kind of knight do you want to be? Not what does everybody expect you to be? What did you think was gonna happen? What do you want to be? You know what I'm saying? So it kind of ties into that central theme of choice again. And then our last main character is he goes by the name Snake Eye. He's actually very proud of this name, but he is another Order Knight. We meet him when a village off of this like just off of the river here, essentially, is being attacked by Banner Knights. They're Banner Knights who aren't happy with the compensation they've been given by their lord, and so they've turned themselves into brigands. So they're raiding this village, they're attacking the villagers and shit like that, and so the Order Knights answer, and they come this way in the dead of night, and Snake Eye is leading the Order Knights, and he rushes into the village and he wrecks shit. He fucking kills everybody. Just in time for the Lords of Iron Crown to arrive downriver from the Iron Vale. And they meet up, and Snake Eye is like, hey, this is getting out of hand. You know, these Banner Knights, they're running rampant. This is all just for the purpose of building up that character tension again, or that world tension, tying into the main conflict, this brewing civil war, you know, Banner Knights versus Order Knights, you know, which side are you gonna choose, ABC, XYZ. All also part of like the marketability of it all. I've gotta write it in a way that makes people want to not only just read the book, but to be part of the story themselves. So I'm leaving a lot of like details kind of open and available so that it makes the reader want to insert themselves into the world. So that's that. The Duke of Iron Crown is there, and he's like, hey, you know, I appreciate your help. We've always shown great respect and deference to the order, so thank you for coming to our aid. Just in time for a messenger to arrive from Bronze Hall. It is the young Lord Ian of Bronze Hills, saying like, hey, I'm holding a council, I'm inviting my neighbors. He's trying very much to live up to his father's shoes, but he's doing it in a very wrong way. And he essentially summons the Duke of Iron Crown to his lands, to this council. And he's like, okay, well, I'm gonna fucking go. And he looks at Snake Eye, he's like, are you gonna come? And Snake Eye is like, I have other shit to do, but enjoy the ride. So night falls, they all camp there at the village, just trying to like, you know, hold security and, you know, restabilize the peace essentially. And overnight, Snake Eye, he sneaks off and he meets with a black hooded figure, and he speaks in a very deep Spanish accent. In this world, it's called Solmari. So you'll notice there's the Solmari Sea here in these Spanish Isles where our hidden villain is, where the Black Warlord is doing his shit. They're known as Solmarians. So he meets with a messenger out in like the middle of the night, and he speaks with a very thick Solmari accent and hands him like a sealed scroll with like black wax, and he's like, a new message, do your shit. And then he just straight up disappears into the night, fucking gone, no words, just gone. So Snake Eye, he opens this scroll. Snake Eye is being used as a pawn to help destabilize the nation, to help tear the order itself asunder so that they are not as strong as they can be to stop the civil war that's coming. So Snake Eye is a villain, but he's not the hidden villain. He is the Count Dooku of our galactic civil war. He is the General Grievous, but our Black Warlord is our Emperor Palpatine. He is hiding in plain sight. He is part of the culture and the fucking feudalistic system. He has ingrained himself, despite the fact that he is of the Solmari peoples. He's put on a facade, a fake accent, a fake name, a fake history, and has infiltrated into the life of being a noble of Idland, and he's tearing the realm apart. He's, you know, doing his part to destabilize the realm, but he's using Sir Snake Eye. His name is Sir Severin, but he goes by Snake Eye because he's blind in his left eye, and its pupil is slit like a snake's. So he's got one good eye, but he's got literally a blind snake eye in his left eye. So he goes by Snake Eye. It's not something he shies away from. It's not a nickname he doesn't like. But he goes by Snake Eye so often that somebody mentions his name. They call him Sir Severin, and he's like shocked by that. He's like, oh shit, forgot that was my fucking name. But anyway, so he reads this message, and it's from the Black Warlord, and he's like, an opportunity presents itself. Attend this council of the boy Duke, or the boy Lord, or whatever. The boy who would be king, some kind of like demeaning name that he calls Ian, essentially. And then he says in a very cryptic note, the chain will break by the bronze link. So referencing the chain of oaths that ties the whole realm together, he tells his spy, essentially, the chain will break by the bronze link. So he's saying, go to this meeting because an opportunity presents itself, and there we will put pressure in order to shatter the chain of oaths and start this civil war. Now, it is not... The reason why this is important isn't just to alter Severin Snake Eye's path, essentially, or to alter the direction of his plot, but it's also it's a very subtle hint. How would the Black Warlord know that there was a council meeting? Why is it that this message arrived over here in this, in this village over here, and then that very same night, another message referencing that message, he says, go to this council. How would he know there's a council being convened in the first place unless he himself was invited, and he's close enough in proximity to be able to send a messenger there in very, very, very quick, procession. You know what I'm saying? So it's all just building into this secret identity, this hidden mysticism, this looming threat hiding in plain sight, but also like just barely beyond the veil, pulling the strings of this great conflict that's looming. That is the last chapter that I have written so far. But that's essentially where we're at. We're 4 chapters in. We're shy of like 50 pages, I think. Yeah, something like that. So we're still well within like the first act of the book. But I'm still trying to condense everything, make the pace feel a lot faster, because in the prologue where we see a council meeting of all the neighboring lords in Bronze Hall, in Iris's opening POV chapter, she's in the main keep of Bronze Hall where there's, a mass knighting ceremony going on. And then Adrian's POV chapter, he's again in Bronze Hall, but is chatting up with Ian, and Ian shows him like this ancient artifact or whatever, something that's going to tie into his personal arc. And then we get like that respite, or that, action-y beat to help kind of push the plot along by doing Snake Eye's opening arc right here in the village raid. And then it's going to be another fucking council meeting here in Bronze Hall. So there's obviously something I got to do to limit the amount of time that we're in Bronze Hall. I mean, unless Bronze Hall ends up becoming our Winterfell, in which case a lot of shit can happen in Bronze Hall because it's such a significant point of our plot. Obviously, having the Black Warlord mention that the chain will break by the bronze link shows that there is significance in the plot to Bronze Hall. It's just going to keep taking us back to Bronze Hall anyway. However, I don't know. I'm thinking it through. I would rather just rather than, criticize every chapter as I'm writing it, I would like to try and write as much as I can until I hit a wall, and then go back and revise it before I get too far. You know what I'm saying? Take it in chunks rather than every chapter by chapter. Because now I'm thinking too small. I'm putting the blinders up and I'm forgetting about chapter 1, and I'm not even prepared for chapter 3, but I'm over here only focusing on the story and the plot within chapter 2, and it's not creating a cohesive chain length of a story, you know what I'm saying? So I'm challenging myself, and I'm doing a lot of self-teaching about storytelling and plot structure and stuff like that, and character arcs, so that I can make it the best version of this story that I want to tell. But I don't need it to be like professional grade. I don't need it to be like publisher ready. It's not going to redefine modern fantasy writing. It's not going to be the next Tolkien or Martin, you know, or whatever. It's literally just a story that I want to tell because I'm interested in it, and I've, you know, invested myself into it. So essentially it will just be like a self-published thing. I might turn it into an ebook and allow y'all to download it digitally. I might find an independent printer and let somebody print off like some cool copies of it, some physical copies of it or something. But we'll see what happens. That's essentially where I'm at with the world building. You'll notice all the history that we were talking about and all the additional lore, hardly any of it has really been mentioned in this. There's so much that gets packed into this world building, but it all affects why characters act the way that they do. So we're seeing a lot of the details that are not explicitly and expositionally mentioned in the story or on the page, but we're seeing it in the details of character interactions, the way the world just kind of operates, dialogue, stuff like that, settings, shit like that. Bada bing. That was a good duel. Not bad. Damn, I really have been yapping for 2 hours. That's crazy. But anyway, can you tell me about that dagger-looking area connected to the stride? If you're talking about this is Longtooth. This is actually part of the Longjaw. So, I'm trying to remember how I did this. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 High Lordships. And then, Longjaw and the Upper Jaw. It's not really known as the Upper Jaw, but it is essentially part of, consider it like the Crownlands from Game of Thrones. So it's the area that immediately swears loyalty to the capital of the kingdom rather than any particular high lordship. So these are the Crownlands. They're known as the Maw. This area down here is known as Longjaw, and this is Longtooth. These are the Maw men, which is their subculture. They are seafarers and very strong seafaring warriors as well. Longtooth is kind of the strongest of all of the Maw men. It's known as the Maw because the bay is kind of shaped like the mouth of a monster, which is also known as like a maw. If you've ever heard the term of like a gaping maw, it's basically like a big fucking monstrous mouth. So the Maw and the Maw men are here. They're kind of more refined. I took a lot of inspiration for their culture and for their physical or visual like aesthetic based off of like the high medieval era of Germany. Think of like the puff and slash sleeves of like the, what are they called, the Landerschnecht or something like that. Somebody knows better. But yeah, so those are the Maw men. Longtooth, and the people of Longtooth actually also hold Jaw Town. So this is like one duke or one duchy essentially, but it's also the capital of the Longjaw. Bitemark is the capital of the Upper Jaw. They do not hold Razorwood. Razorwood is actually part of Maelorn, I think, is what I decided. But all of the trees, like all of these southern trees that touch the the coast, essentially belongs to the Crownlands. Mossland is part of the Upper Jaw, Smalltooth, Upper Jaw. Estermaw is part of the Upper Jaw as well. Esther meaning eastern, and then Maw obviously because of the Maw lands. So Esther Maw, and then from Lohalis, like the territory kind of cuts off from the tip of this lake to this bend of the river. This river is also known as the Tyr. That's kind of hard to differentiate from tear in writing. It is the Tyr because Tyr and tear are literally spelled the same way. But it is the Tyr because this is supposed to be like the eye of the Titan. The lake itself is actually only known as Iron Lake because it was dominated by the Iron Men of Iron Crown. Again, subcultures. So these are all like northern men, and they're all part of a subculture of people. But then the subcultures, you have like Iron Men, you have Bronze Men, you have White Men. Not because they are white, but because this is known as the White Sea, and they're seafarers. These guys are probably as close to Vikings as we're gonna get, or like, think of Vikings if they turned into knights, if they evolved. You know, they're Norsemen that evolved into knighthood. So that's kind of what we have here. So Oromar is where like the last of the oarmen were. Oars, obviously, like, you know, they row on a Viking ship. So that's kind of like the culture that we have here. So the Viking-esque people came, they settled on Oromar. The Bronze Men declared war, and they fought off the Ormen. Ormen actually traveled westward and settled in Newport Harbor, where they found respite with the other seafarers and seafaring peoples of the White Seas of the North, and together they mixed their cultures into essentially the white men of Newport. And then obviously you have the Storm Men of Maelorn. So fuck those guys. The potassium is strong in you. That's crazy. So, sorry. I saw a previous chat message that was asking about Aelfarn. What happened to Aelfarn that caused it to be a ruin? So the ruins of Aelfarn comes from the Axonian uprising, or the Age of Axes. So Aelfarn has always been disputed between Axony and Windlane. So Irevane also used to belong to Windlane. Or the territories did. The castle of Irevane did not exist yet at the time. But during the like this long disputed period, like a lot of bad blood and bad history between Windlane and Axony was going on. The Axonians actually built the castle of Irevane right here in order to blockade the river. There's like a river crossing right here, and they went close enough to Aelfarn that they could launch an assault if the Windmen of Windlane ever decided to try and take Aelfarn. Essentially, it used to be a city that was shared by both the Windmen and the Axonians. But there was just so much bad blood between the two peoples. So when the Age of Axes happened and the Axonian uprising kicked off, they thought that the Windlane men were going to be on their side because the Windmen of Windlane are part, or used to be part of, like, the Axonian peoples, but obviously, like, they've developed their own culture due to their region. And when Windlane refused to side with the rebels, they sent a force to capture Aelfarn, and they, basically massacred all of the Windmen that were there. If they did not give their support to the to the rebellion, they were put to the sword. So Windlane went, and they marched out against the Axonians to liberate Aelfarn, and the resulting battle just kind of destroyed everything. Like the whole fucking castle, or the whole city, was just torched in the end. Not intentionally. Neither one of these factions intended on torching the city of Aelfarn. It just kind of happened. Now remember, there is also Saxe Crown right here. So Saxe Crown was at the time the capital of Axony, and so when they moved the capital of Windlane to Windmere, they could be closer to Aelfarn because it's an important river city. You know, like it connects the people of Iron Crown to the people of Windlane and Axony and into Idehall. So anything that comes from the west comes in through Idehall, travels up the river, gets traded at Aelfarn, and then people can come from Iron Crown, Iron Lake, Windlane, and Axony to come and trade at Aelfarn. It's one of the most pivotal like cities of trade, right here on the river and right in a central area that connects so many different peoples. So it was very important culturally to both of these factions. But when the Axonian uprising happened, they came and they butchered people who refused to side with the rebels. And so when Windmere launched their armies to retaliate, it resulted in just the ultimate destruction of the city. Lohalis has been sitting there for fucking ever. They're an ancient castle that's part of Windlane. But Lohalis was not involved because they knew that even if they were to march out and try and liberate or even take Aelfarn, they would be leaving Lohalis undefended. So Saxe Crown would have been able to send men there to take Lohalis before the men of Windmere or even Estermaw could get to Lohalis in time to defend it. So they were stuck in a pretty precarious situation. Either Lohalis went and defended Aelfarn from the rebels, in which case another rebel force could come from Saxe Crown, or they could have waited, in which case it gave enough time for both forces from Irevane and Saxe Crown to come over here. And at that point, Lohalis was like, well, I'm not going to risk going to Saxe Crown then to force a surrender of their capital, because then what happens if because there's two forces now at Aelfarn. There's the forces of Irevane and the forces of Saxe Crown. If they go for Saxe Crown, what's to stop one of these armies from splitting off and hitting them from behind, or in turn going behind them and taking Lohalis? And in all that time, it would have taken them ages for the forces of Windmere to mobilize and get over here, because Windmere being the capital means they have to wait for support from their vassal houses from Yorwood, Lowfort, and Hearthguard. It would have just taken ages. It was a fucking disaster, honestly, of like literal breakdown of fucking logistics that just ruined it. So now, in an attempt to rebuild their trade significance, the Axonians created the city of Augafjord, which is not as successful. Think of it as like Lake Town from The Hobbit. It's there, but it's not like the city of Dale. You know what I'm saying? It's just Lake Town. It's Augafjord. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, that's a fun one. Any other questions? That's about all I had to say, honestly. I see that y'all are also like the encounter between the three rivers. If you mean like down here. Yeah, so we have the tier that leads down here where it splits off. The tier goes all the way down into this is where like the tier kind of ends as it feeds into the Maw, the Bay of the Maw. But then it feeds down here. These are just like, they don't have like specific names, honestly, like these rivers, just because they're so all over the fucking place. Essentially, I think it's just like, I don't know, the Maw rivers, Longjaw rivers, something like that. That'd be pretty interesting. It's a bloodbath in the chat. No, I agree. Are there no normal soldiers? Yes, there are 100% normal soldiers. There are, I was going to use Crusader Kings to almost as like a template to create my men-at-arms units, my knight units, my cultures, my faiths, and even build some of the characters, because I am teaching myself to draw portraits and people again, or at least trying to, so that I can create these visual representations of the characters and stuff without relying on forking out money for another artist to do it or relying on AI art. So, not going to do that. But I did, in fact, create the map myself. This took me fucking ages. I'm pretty sure y'all have seen me do it. This map used to look completely different also. It used to look a lot messier and a lot, bad. Like footmen or archers, because we have heard a lot more of knights than your average army. Well, that's because the knights are like the sole focus. They're few and far between, sure, but because of the importance of knighthood now and the strength of knighthood in the current like conflict, everybody is flocking to like get knights in their army. And even if you can't get a shit ton of knights, you can get powerful enough knights to train your normal troops to get them their quality a little bit better. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like a video game mechanic. So imagine if you can't have an army of knights, you have a knight commander who has a potential buff on the rest of your man-at-arms that makes them tougher, makes them stronger, makes their quality increase. So now instead of having just a regular army of like 1-star footmen and 1-star archers, you now have a knight commander that turns them to 3-star footmen and 3-star archers. You know what I'm saying? Stuff like that. But yeah, there are vast armies here. I do actually have a lot of stuff written down here. So like personal notes, like the size and population of the landmass. 500 by 500 miles equals 250,000 square miles. With a moderate castle density that mimics that of like Game of Thrones or even medieval France or Spain. We're looking at one castle every 25 square miles, which is approximately 10,000 castles here within these lands. Now, obviously, there's only a few like major castles that mark like high lordships and like capitals of these high lordships, but castles can be anything between like, Winterfell and then like, I don't know what's a minor castle that hardly anybody's fucking heard about. Fucking Castamere or I don't know, man. Just any kind of like fortress or fortification or tower, watchtower out in the fucking woods could be considered a castle as well. So we're looking at approximately 10,000 castles within the entire country. Yeah, we're looking at a population of 12.5 million people. Considering we have roughly 10/11/13, if you want to consider the two archduchies as well. Big enough territories, like 12 to 13, big enough territories to muster around like 10,000 men apiece. That'll fit into that like 1 million population. I have been using ChatGPT to help figure out the actual logistics, because again, creating this world is one thing, but making it make sense in a physical and logistical stance was a completely different beast. So with a population of 12.5 million, what realistic army sizes could be mustered by the 10 major regions of Ireland? So based off of this timetable, a total peacetime army is approximately 0.5% of the population. So at a time of peace, when all your men are standing down and you're not currently at war, you could have up to 62,500 men per army, per high lordship. Sorry, that's total. Per region, so for each of the high lordships, if they summoned all of their men and all of their dukes and all of their counts to their armies and shit like that, you can muster approximately 6,250 men per army. That's assuming that everybody has the same landmass size and the same population within each of their territories. Now, that's not, the set in stone or everything, but that's what we're looking at. Now, in times of war, the total population or total percent of the population that gets summoned when the entire nation goes to war, it's about approximately 3% of the population. That's sorry, 375,000 people within the armies, the total armies of Ireland when the whole nation goes to war. Per region, it's looking like 37,500 men per army per region. Total full mobilization is approximately 8%. So imagine if the entire nation went to war with a neighbor with a different nation. It's looking at how many fucking zeros is that? That's looking like 1,000,000 men. 1,000,000 men can march off to war. Approximately 8% of the population. So that's pretty interesting. But yeah, so I've done the math, or I've had help doing the math. So I appreciate you guys asking your questions and everything. I see that I'm not getting anywhere with you guys. I don't know if I did that right. Oh, I did do it right. Lord Commander, is there a culture similar to the samurai in your world? Yes, there is, actually. Hold on, we're gonna watch this duel real quick. We're duking it out, me and the doctor. Damn, we're pretty even. It's a pretty even matchup. You might have better gear than I do. Because believe it or not, there is a difference. It makes a difference. Critical hit. Oh. And a miss. Come on, it's me. Let's fucking go, baby. Hell yeah. How are you still alive? There's no way. Get his ass. No way. If you come back and clutch this, I'm going to be mad as hell. A fucking critical? That's crazy. Brother. Ah, and there goes the crown. The man got me good. Banana power. That's crazy. The banana bandit strikes again. The Lord Commander has fallen. Is there some kind of discriminated minority in your kingdom? Yes. And that also helps me answer this other question by Chase Jennings. Is there a samurai culture in your world? Also, yes. So the samurai culture actually exists right here in the lands of the Mornashi. So this kind of represents like a feudalistic Japan style where the entire land is just covered in like black soil because a lot of these mountains are active volcanoes. Now right here in the center is the only green you'll ever find in the entire fucking continent. So all of this is like a very fertile river valley. So there's like this fake fantasy science that I made up. So like the water that's being pushed up to the surface by the heat of the volcanoes and shit, the magma underneath the earth is pushing all this water up to the soil. Obviously it's not doing much for the black areas, or so it seems. The volcanic ash kind of just buries everything. But when the water from the soil gets pushed up and then runs through the mountains, the blackened soil kind of runs through or like the water runs through like the blackened soil and almost purifies it, and then it in turn fertilizes the black soil. So you've got a lot of like fertility right here in this river valley from all the water being pushed up by the volcanic activity and shit. It's fake science, it's fantasy science, but that's what we're working with. But yeah, so the continent and the kingdom of Mornashi is where the samurai reside, essentially. Very feudalistic Japan, I think, and they're pretty cool. Now they are seen as kind of pariahs within Idlander society. Only because like they don't believe in the chain of oaths or anything like that. They're very independent. They don't believe in knighthood. They have samurai, which could, be considered a kind of knight, heavy armor, stuff like that. Swordsman, master swordsman, bound by honor, stuff like that. But a lot of the Mornashi move over here because there's a lot of political intrigue going on between the Mornashi states, or the heads of state within the country itself. And so they moved to Ireland for stability. The reason why they go to Iceland specifically is because over here, desert. Up here is think of like Iceland or even like Norway. Um, Super savage states of like Viking and stuff like that. You've got the Siberia up here and like the Russians. So of course they're very wary of foreigners as well. So they come over here to Iceland where it's literally just a melting pot of cultures just to be shit on because of their weird, traditions and lifestyles and shit like that. But yeah, so the samurai live here, and if you happen to find one within Iceland, they are the pariah folk. The reason why too is because in Iceland the main religion worships absolutely worships the god Titan, or the Titan god of mankind. We see him as the great liberator, the man to lead the way to salvation eventually. He's the one who's going to close all of the portals to the Scar. He will return one day, close all the portals to the Scar, and ascend his believers into the heavens. He's essentially Jesus if Jesus was a monstrous Titan. But obviously his physical body is believed to be here and dead. Now, the reason why the religion is important when it comes to the pariah folk of the Mournashi is because the Mournashi who settled upon this body do so as a means of spiritual protection. They have this weird ancestral magic that ties into their ancestors. So if you know anything about Spanish culture, there's this thing called an ofrenda. Or if you've seen like Coco or The Book of the Dead, also those are children's movies about Spanish culture and the Day of the Dead. There is this thing called an ofrenda, which is basically like this big family tree. And if you I guess if you remember your ancestors, you're kind of like connecting to them. You're keeping them alive in the afterlife, essentially. So it's kind of the same concept here. This samurai culture, they memorize their ancestors, they know their ancestors by name, they know their achievements and the thing they do and stuff like that. And so through this weird ancestral magic, they can call upon that wisdom. So imagine you're somebody who's not exactly the best warrior, but you call upon the ancestral spirit of one of your ancestors who was a great and powerful warrior. Then that ancestral resonance magic kind of reverberates through you, and you can summon their sword skills, despite the fact that you have absolutely none. Now, it's not a widespread or very common practice to use this ancestral resonance magic, but it's something that they do. Now, part of that ancestral resonance also comes with not just learning skills, but also taking the wisdom from their ancestors. So that being said, a lot of these people believe by looking through their ancestors' memories, they can look all the way back to the Titan War, and they see this guy not as a savior, but as a betrayer. He's somebody who betrayed his own kind. He's a kinslayer. That's something that's like demonized and horrendously illegal within the Mournashi culture. And so they're like, no, fuck you and your religion. This guy is not some liberator. He's a betrayer. He's a kinslayer, which is the highest of crimes. And that ties into that resonance magic as well, that ancestor magic, because there's so much reverence for ancestors and for your bloodline. Being a kinslayer, somebody who kills members of your bloodline, is a horrendous, terrible fucking crime. Not just like, on a legalistic scale, but also on a spiritual scale. Like, you're committing atrocities, and you're like, I don't know. It's like a sin, essentially, I guess, in their culture. So that's part of that. I think that's pretty fun. What about the crab-looking island? This one down here, because this is the kingdom of Cangreal. This is one of our Solmari states. Think of it like a medieval Spain type culture. This entire area, this entire western continent, all of these are Spain inspired. So in these this mountain range right here, you've got the kingdom of Balvaria, it's spelled like Balvaria, but it's not, English centric. It's Spanish centric. So it's Balvaria. It's not Balvaria. It's Balvaria. So you've got Cangreal, you've got Balvaria, you've got it within this like kind of river territory right here. This is Castovar. And then this entire like outward stretch, or whatever, leading up to like these foothills, this is called Lysandria. Um, so there are a bunch of like different Spanish style like kingdoms. Balvaria is very warlike, very warrior culture because of their mountainous ranges. These guys, think of like the Clawmen from Claw Isle and House Celtigar. Very regal in their own right, but also very independent. They don't really have like a kind of centered identity with any of the other Solmari states. They kind of do their own thing. They are also a warrior culture, but they don't believe in outward conquest. They believe in inward conquest. They very much fight each other kind of just for fun. It's like ritualistic warfare. They do this this thing where they fight each other on an annual scale, and they do it as like a form of worship for the war titans, essentially, which were obviously the titans that specialized in warfare. So theirs is a type of titan worship religion that gives individual identities to each titan, and so they have like a specific pantheon of gods that they actively worship to. But among them is in chief over all the other deities of their pantheon is the war titans, essentially. So the war titans demand ritualistic warfare. So every once in a while, every year or so, all the people, or all the I guess nobles and nobility and noble houses of Cangreal, they will come together with armies that they've trained up over the year, and they'll fight each other to the death. Not the lords, but their armies. It's essentially like playing chess, or I don't know, playing Total War, where the player is just watching these armies decimate each other with no consequence to themselves. What is this about Titans? That's the whole thing, man. That's the whole creation myth of the world. The world is called Titanskar because of these giant divine beings, beast-like beings called Titans, that roamed the earth and created the land and the seas and created humanity. And so they killed each other off, and then their bodies fell to the earth and they became part of the land. So now we live on a land that is built off of essentially the corpses of our gods, known as Titans. But they're not benevolent gods. They were very mean. They enslaved humanity and made us do shit for their will. But now all the Titans are dead. No more Titans roam the world. Those that did survive, they kind of ran off into this purgatorial state and live there now. So that was fun. Ooh. I love all the questions y'all are asking. So the mainland does look like a shark. It was not intentional. This is not all one Titan. It's just, imagine like parts of Titan bodies are hidden under the waters. Some are buried underneath each other, so there's a lot of overlap. Like this looks like a Titan head, this looks like a Titan head, this looks like an eyeball, and then like a jaw and a mouth. But they all like fell on top of each other. So there's parts of like Titan bodies that are, hidden underneath the tectonic plates, buried under each other, buried under the land, hidden under the ocean. This is considered to be one of the first Titans felled, which is why this land is a lot more developed than any of the other lands of human society, essentially. This one is a little more like tribalistic. I don't know. Their culture is also weird. They live on the body of the being that they despise, that they see as a great betrayer. So it's pretty interesting. But yeah, and then what is your opinion that I do with the Far East continent? So in the Far East, I think we decided that all of this, everything south of this mountain range was desert land, except for what's immediately bound to these rivers. All of this was going to be fertile, like river valleys, essentially, kind of like Egypt. So it's all desert, and then the fertile river lands and shit like that. And then up north, I forgot what I named it. I actually had some spare names, but there was a land up here that I wanted to utilize, and it was supposed to be kind of this I guess you could say is a Viking-esque culture, you know? It's Vikings but different, you know? I don't know exactly what, but we were going to use something there. Is there a Mongol-inspired faction? Actually, there are. They exist, I want to say here. So they utilize this river as a boundary because down here is all desert. All of this, all these little dots are trees. I know it's hard to see because I made everything sepia tone to make it look like it was drawn on a fucking piece of parchment paper. But trees, so all of this is green, like flats, plains, trees, all the way up here into the mountains, and then obviously it's all snow and ice and trees. So this, all of this here, where all the trees are, this is the Kingdom of Cheval. This is Braywick County, where we have our rustic rivermen. And then from this river, all the way out here, just south of this mountain pass, this big area right here, this is all dominated by the Mongolians. I don't have a name for them. I don't think. I do have a... I might actually. Hold on. Give me a second. I have to find it. That's not what I wanted. Oh, I don't have it on my phone. All right, hold on. I have it on my iPad. One moment, lads. All right. One thing you should know about me is that I am Paul Muad'Dib Atreides, Duke of Arrakis. So these are known as the Volsgrad, Volsgrad, Volsgrad Steppes. I'm not 100% content with that name, so if y'all wanted to create a faction for the Mongolian steppes here, y'all absolutely can. But I do have, like, you know, hold on, you can't see. Like, oh, fuck me. So I do have, like, territories blocked off and potential names for them and everything like that. So, up here you have Mornashi North and Mornashi South, the entire continent belonging to the Kingdom of the Mornashi. You have up here, all of these northern lands are known as the Vrelands of Skarn. Over here you have the Tsardom of Dracovar, kind of like dragon-esque. So the Tsardom of Dracovar. Dunroth. This is the name that we used up here. It's a big green, like, faction land up here in the east, just above all these desert lands, but it's known as Dunroth. I don't know why, but I think it's pretty cool. So we have Dunroth. This is the desert lands down here is the Zephyrim Sultanate, and then these this Titan Scar, this little Titan Scar right here, is known as it's conquered by a knightly order of, think of like the Templars, who fight for Holy Jerusalem. This is Holy Jemison. And then you have the Thracian League down here. This is our Grecian city-state peninsula. And then you have... Originally, I had named this the Lothwin March, which I think was pretty cool. But then I decided I wanted this entire area to be kind of like a Spanish-inspired culture. So I renamed it to the Cengrial. So Cengrial, Balvaria, Castovar, and then Lysandria. And then up here, all of these hills are known as Hartholm. Hartholm. It's either Hartholm, or you can even call it like Harthum, you know, with a th, like a soft Harthum. But yeah, so Harthum, It is said what I wanted to do with this was kind of make it resemblance of the Barrowlands from Game of Thrones, just because the concept and the world building there was really interesting to me. So they have a lot of like rolling hills and everything like that, not a whole lot of mountains, some flatlands here and there, but it's nice and cold up here, being this north essentially. But all of these hills are said to be like massive burial grounds, the remnants of human corpses buried beneath the earth, or beneath like the fallen Titan bodies essentially during the Titan War. So all of these hills are supposed to be like mass graves, which I thought was going to be pretty interesting. So Hartham was going to be a very like very grim place. You know what I'm saying? So that's pretty cool. The south, it's Lizharad. I'm okay with that. So imagine like if in fact a lot of this blank area is in fact sand and dunes and shit like that, desert lands. Now imagine that the Lizharad, I kind of fuck with that. That's pretty cool. The desert in the south of the eastern continent is named Lizharad, La Tierra de las Apariciones, Lizharad. So you have Lizharad, the deserts of Lizharad down here, and it's named after these giant Komodo lizards that bury themselves under the sand. So think of like the sandworms from Dune, but they're lizards. They're not just like weird worms, but they don't just like go out and they like eat fucking everything in sight or whatever. There are giant lizards, so think of like alligator sized lizards, I guess, even bear sized lizards buried underneath the sand. They burrow themselves underneath the sand. But then you have elder lizards, which are actually fucking massive, and they drag these massive mobile cities on like over the sand dunes and shit. I think that would be pretty interesting. Yes, we can duel, actually. So let me duel Chase Jennings. Anyway, I have something similar to this, but I use Asgard Fantasy Map Simulator. I would definitely recommend it. I fuck with that. Can I make a petition for a nation completely controlled by a mercenary company in that desert continent? I'd be okay with that. Damn, you got the first strike on me. That's crazy. Are you fighting me with a frying pan? That's wild. I have a sword and a halberd. I'm getting beaten by a frying pan. The choice of weaponry for every fucking Disney princess. Face me, Chase Jennings. I am the Lord Commander. You've got to miss this shot or I'm done for. Oh, is a critical hit? Fuck. I'm cooked. Yeah, you got me good. A nation completely controlled by a mercenary company in that desert continent. So what I think is, because this desert continent has actually been claimed by Sir Ignacio already, you can get with him and say that the mercenary company helped found the kingdom or the empire down here in the south, and because of their support, the ruling body made the mercenary company the like military structure. It's like you came from a mercenary company and now you're the head of our military state. You know what I'm saying? I feel like that'd be pretty interesting. It's more like the Jinns. True. Komodo dragons that pop out of the ground to kill you is terrifying. Yeah. Because it's from the Arabic word of illusions, Lucians, in the mystical way. That's pretty cool. Fuck with that. Slaughter the Craven! And because the desert makes you dry out and confused. True. So what's the mountain land right down in the South Island? If you're talking about this, I have no idea. No idea. All of it has been undiscovered by me, the architect. I personally feel like my mercenary company would not like being directly controlled by a person, but we like money. Well, that's exactly it. You're a mercenary company that became like a government asset, but you're also given free reign to like act independently, you know? Like say that the government doesn't have a standing army itself. They have like their own guardsmen like household guard, but then the government calls upon the military structure, which is the mercenary company, who leads the vast armies and shit like that. And in turn, they get paid in gold and in loot. That way, the government body keeps its hands clean entirely, keeping their population focused on shit that they want them to be focused on. And then the mercenary company reaps the benefit of doing our dirty work for us. You know what I'm saying? Or like there are a lot of city-states. The mountains of Makeda, that's right, we did talk about this before. Like land corsairs. So what type of fantasy is this? This is kind of low fantasy. Think Game of Thrones. The entire population is human. There is a subpopulation of half human, half titan creatures that act as like maesters or like, mystical guidance or mystical guides of human spirit, essentially. But otherwise, they don't do much. There is a bit of magic here. So the Mornashi have this ancestral resonance where they can call upon ancestors' wisdom and battle skills and shit and utilize it in the modern day. But it is very temperamental. You have to study your ancestors. You have to study their achievements and the family history. The more understanding you have of your family history, the more power and wisdom you can summon from your ancestors. There is a forbidden style of magic that utilizes the power of the scar, essentially. But you utilize like the physical corpse of the titans. So beneath like mountain ranges or somewhere out there in the world, there are remnants of the physical bodies of the titans before their spirits fled into the scar. A lot of it is bone. The most common you would find is bone, is titan bone. And there are mortals who try to tap into this power and they become corrupted. They their skin grows bony and their bones like morph and deform and they grow grotesque, and big bone protrusions grow out of their face and their body, and it corrupts them from the inside out. Essentially what they do is they try to summon the power of the titans for themselves, but because their mortal bodies can't handle such power and shit like that, it literally will kill them from the inside out. Now the Tyrantur, or the Tiratun, the Tiratun, these half, titan beings that act as maesters, they are the only ones who can actively tap into this kind of titanic like bone magic. Essentially, that's because they are also themselves like born from the bone of the titans, which is why they have such bony skin as a natural part of their appearance. They also have 4 arms, much like the Titan god of man that created them, because this guy has 4 arms. That's why he was capable of slaying so many of his Titan brethren in the Titan Wars, because unlike the other Titans who had very bestial features like wings and claws and paws and scales and tails and shit like that, this man had 4 arms and opposable thumbs and was capable of like wielding weapons and shit like that. And so he literally like used a mountain as like a sword and slew his brethren, essentially. I got you, John. I'm down to challenge another one of my peoples. John Chugan. Now you have to type !accept with no space. But anyway, by the way, my mercenary company will be called the Red Fleet, and the culture is based off of the ancient Chinese. That's pretty kick-ass, dude. Alright, let's see this duel. The Lord Commander versus Sir John. Oh, look at him. A miss right out the gate. A critical hit right out the gate. Let's go. Let's go. Ah. Damn, he's got just a sliver of health left. That's crazy. Oh, and it's done. Victory for the Lord Commander. Be careful with the sea serpents. Not for real. Hey, I'd be into that. The Red Corsairs sounds pretty kick-ass, honestly. And I think they could have really, really strong ties with the Mornashi people and the Thracian League because they're Corsairs. They travel all over the place, obviously. If they're a mercenary company, they don't have to have like a single area that they hail from, like a regional identity. Their region is essentially the seas. So you've got the Mornashi Kingdom where they often make birth and make trade at. They've also been known to make dealings here in Holy Jemison, the Scar of Jemison, where they trade the knightly crusaders here with weapons, provide them with weapons so that they can defend the Scar of Jemison from the desert people who seek to exploit it and bring back the Titans. Essentially, that'd be interesting. And then obviously being Corsairs, they come over here and they trade with the Thracian League. Or even like in times of war, maybe they go after the Thracian League, people who are who don't like the, or who split off, I guess, from who abandoned the Red Corsairs. They turn pirate and they start harassing the Thracian League. My mercenary company comes from the Desert Company, but I would say they were originally from the merchants and the sultan's military, but we sort of evolved into a mercenary company because of an earthquake. I fuck with that. It's pretty cool. Maybe you have like this tiny little island right here that split off during an earthquake in ancient history, and this tiny island essentially is where your Corsair company like has big naval bases built upon. That'd be pretty interesting. Imagine you're a merchant ship and you're passing by this island of the Red Corsairs, and you just see these massive towers, not buildings, but towers of sails, just absolute fucking sails, just crimson red against like a blue-white sky of the ocean, just standing in defiance against the blue of the seas, and I feel like that'd be pretty interesting. That destroyed our settlement, making us to the sea. Yeah. But this threat is easily dealt because the spirit is easily absent-minded. Felt. So is there a way to petition a character or faction or merc company, or is it random suggestions that get chosen? Because it all seems cool to think of a character for. Absolutely, you can make a fucking character for it. If you're not in the Discord already, I highly recommend you join. Because then you could just throw your character suggestions and everything in there as well. I do have a very specific direction that I'm going for when it comes to the actual plot of the book. But as far as the world building as a whole, a lot of this area has been like left undiscovered, you know? So I am very open to suggestions for all the crazy fantasy ideas y'all want to throw into this. I'm definitely down for it. Ooh. Also, my mercenary company doesn't have a direct leader. We have 3 in a council from the Blue Fleet, the Red Fleet, and the Yellow Fleet. That's pretty kick-ass. That's pretty kick-ass. I want to give y'all this island right here. We're going to call it the Island of Fleets. Or Fleet, I don't know. Yeah, Island of Fleets. Just sounds cool. Can I pitch an idea for the fantasy side? Yes. Yes, you may. The world itself is called Titan Scar. I'll put it in the chat. Titan Scar. You're welcome. Now, if anybody who is in the Discord is in chat, drop a Discord link so that our friends can join in and be part of the ongoing fantasy discussion of Titan Scar. I want to say my mercenary. Whoops, hold on. I want to say my mercenary company has its specialties, like the Red Fleet has swords and shields, the Yellow Fleet spears, Blue Fleet archers. I like that. That'd be pretty cool. I would say I would love to see the Yellow Fleet be master marksmen, like master archers. Because imagine you're in a sea battle, and then from the ship is just this wave of yellow feathered arrows that just... Because they stand out so well. I feel like it'd be so cool. Red arrows are kind of basic. Everybody does red arrows. But I think yellow arrows would really, really stand out. Can I make a mercenary company with a mix of knights and Mongols type troops? Yes. Yes, you may. So imagine like tribalistic knights, you know, far to the east over here in the steppes and the plains. And so they have like heavy armor, but it's adorned with like tribalistic like war paint and bones and feathers. And maybe they're mounted archers and shit like that, but also maybe they're mounted crossbowmen. Maybe it's not like heavy plate armor. Maybe it's armor that's made out of something else, like lacquered bone or wood. Maybe it's a tribalistic knightly function kind of over here, you know, like they believe in knighthood, but they have like this spirituality and tribalism to them. And they rather than using the Titan bones for magic, they use it as like weaponry and as armor. That'd be pretty kick-ass. The Eastern Hordes. Is there anybody on Fishbone Island? What do you mean Fishbone Island? There is a castle called Fishbone down here. Fishbone Island. Which one are you referring to? I don't remember. I can do that. Also, I want my mercenary company to mainly work for the Sultan and absolutely avoid the mainland, since we tried to invade once and got wrecked by an army of footmen and knights. The one that looks like a bone of a fish. Well, obviously, I don't know which one you're talking about. I don't know what fish bones look like, obviously. Japan? This one? Yes, this is Japan. This is a rib cage, and this is the skull of a Titan. It's all one country. It's Mornashi. The whole country is called Mornashi, but it's split into Mornashi North and Mornashi South. So this is like the industrialized military head of state, and then this is the agricultural residential area. This is where like we build tall essentially within this this fertile river valley. Yeah. Then we have our Crusader state over here defending the Scar of Jemison. We have our Sultanate of the... I forgot what we called them. Something. Braywick County. And then the Kingdom of Cheval. Then the Eastern Steppes. Can the Mongol Mixed Knight Mercenary Company fight for resources instead of money? Yes. Maybe they fight for treasures and artifacts. You know what I'm saying? So they offer their services, or they hardly ever offer their services, right? People can come to them and offer them tribute in, you know, return for their service. They'll offer like gold or resources and stuff like that, horses even. And then, but the only time that the Mongolian Knight Company will actively ask somebody to serve them, you know, is if they have like a Titan bone artifact that they want, you know, because they revere these Titan bones as part of their tribal identity, and they use the Titan bone to create weapons and armor and shit like that. My mercenary company calls any king or leader of a nation a sultan, since our original kingdom was led by a sultan, so that sort of stayed with us. Cool. Is there any free real estate? Insert homeless beggar emoji. There's an island up here that looks kind of like a tooth. So there's this island up here. These lands are called the Raylands of Skarn. It's kind of like a frozen north dominated by Vikings. You could utilize that. This is Hearthholm, which has a bit of an identity. All of this has an identity. This is part of our main plot. You can use Antarctica. Maybe there's a hidden culture there that we don't know about. And then there's Dunroth, which is the name of the land up here that hasn't been claimed. I was thinking of like a mystical Celtic island type vibe. Think of like Ireland and Scotland and shit like that. So they kind of convened up here and everything. And then this is obviously a globe or a sphere, so the seas come over here. So you've got Hearthholm and then Dunroth, both of whom kind of share a similar culture. Same with the Raylands of Skarn. Are any semi-small islands for claim that my mercenary company can use as a fortress, possibly, or something in that order? Maybe. There's like an island here. You could probably use this little peninsula as well, because we can say that the Tsardom of Dracovar has not passed into the mountains. Maybe this belongs to something else. There is this Sharktooth Island. You could use any of these lands up here. Yeah. Since my mercenary company is made up of 3 fleets, can we be called the United Fleet? Fuck with that. Well, be careful in Makeda. They don't use the Sultan term because it is the title that the desert nomads use for their great horde leaders. Yep. What is the peninsula called? I don't have a name for it, actually. There isn't a name for this particular peninsula. There isn't one. There's also like this down here that somebody could use, this kind of horn or finger or penis, whatever you want to name this landmass. Oh, my back. Oh, shit. Sorry. Your mercenary company can settle into one of the islands near my mercenary company's island. We won't mind honor among mercenaries. Yeah, so down here is where the United Fleet lands. That's pretty cool. All of these islands are claimed by Idland. Finn. The north he wanted that would be more like jungle with Hawaiians / pre-colonial Indians. Interesting. Finn. Yeah, so you could utilize like this this peninsula and the island itself. Use that for something that'd be pretty interesting. Then of course there's an island up here, and then the lands of Dunroth. Whew. But again, thank you all for joining me. Can I claim the steppe as my mercenary territory? Not the entire steppe, no. I mean, you can. As the mercenary company, you can lay claim to the entire steppe, but it doesn't mean it is yours. You could just be like the Mongolians and say it's yours and go around raiding and taking what you want. Same thing with the Dothraki. I would like to claim the peninsula of Finn. Cool. I like it. But anyway, I am going to leave this live stream here. It's been going for about 3 hours, and I've been yapping my lungs out. And I have to make content for you all for other videos. So, to go more into depth with my mercenary company, when we aren't hired, we mainly sell iron weapons to the kingdoms around us. I like that. I like that. Parts of the steppe. Sure. Sure. Literally everything like south of these mountains, and then east of these rivers. So all of this land is considered like steppe land. We desire the highlands of the left island of the north. Yeah. So these lands up here are known as Hartholm, Hartholm, Hartholm or Hartholm. Essentially, all of these hills are said to be like mass graves of humans, the untold millions of humans who were slain during the Titan War. So it's a very grim world up here. Think of the Barrowlands from Game of Thrones, House Dustin, and shit like that. Do more streams on this world. We love it. I'm glad. Yeah, I had a ton of fun. I definitely will, especially as more world building comes around. Um, but anyway, yeah, if you're not in the Discord, join the Discord. We'll do more discussions about this. It's hard to do live streams just because my day job demands so much time. And then obviously, like, I'm writing, I'm drawing, I'm teaching myself how to write and how to draw. And I'm making video content for you all as well. So, but again, this was a ton of fun. Thank you all for the birthday wishes. I am turning 26 tomorrow, and I have to work because it is Mother's Day, which is a big fucking deal. But yeah, if any of y'all are artists, draw, art for this world, for your companies, put it in the Discord. Please, please, please join the Discord and share all your ideas. This is a massive world that just demands to be explored, and you guys are the explorers. So I greatly appreciate all of you guys. I appreciate all the birthday wishes. Fucking 26, Jesus, I might as well be expired already. I have wrinkles and everything. I'm 1 foot in the grave. No, it's not that serious. But yeah, I will see you guys next time. And again, thank you all very much for all your love and support. And I will see you in the upcoming videos. Goodbye, my